2020, and it is now 3 o'clock. This meeting is being held virtually as allowed by Governor Baker's executive order dated March 12, 2020, and suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Anyone wishing to speak, for those online, click on the participants box on the bottom of the screen and then click raise hand in the text box. That will be when the agenda item is up for you to speak that you want to speak on. For those who call in by telephone, press *9. I'll recognize you by name when it's time to speak. If anyone's having technical difficulties, either the chat box on your screen or call 508-362-3828 and technical support will assist you. Because there are members participating remotely, we will take a roll call vote on every action we have today, and we record the meeting for purposes of creating minutes. Just want to make sure everyone can hear each other, including the remote participants. And when we do the roll call vote, we'll state the names of the members who are remote participating, and that would be announced as the roll call is taken. At this time, I'm going to ask all commission members to please turn on their microphones for the roll call vote. And I'll ask our clerk, Lisa, to take the roll call now, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fred Chirigotis.
Here.
Stephen Mealy.
Here.
Elizabeth Taylor.
Here.
Tom Wilson.
Here.
Sid Roy.
Here.
Joy Brookshire. Joy, you have to unmute yourself.
Here.
Thank you. Charles McCaffrey. Charles McCaffrey. Charles, if you could unmute yourself.
Here.
Thank you. Jacqueline Edston. Ernest Virgilio.
Here.
Doug Fromm.
Here.
Cheryl Andrews.
Here.
Harold Mitchell.
Here.
Kevin Grunwald.
Here.
Richard Elkin.
Here.
John McCormick Jr.
Here.
Ron Bergstrom.
Here.
John Harris. David Wheaton.
Here.
And Michael Maxim.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. If all the members could please mute themselves back into the mute, and we'll tell you when to turn your mic back on at the appropriate time. At this time, we're going to start with public comment. This is items that are not on today's agenda. This is to allow you to speak your voice during public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, for those online, just click on the participants box on the bottom of the screen and then click raise hand in the text box. For those who called in by telephone, press *9. I'll recognize you by name when it's time to speak. Anyone having any technical issue, either use the chat box on your screen or call 508-362-3828 and technical support will assist you. So at this time, anyone wishing to speak for public comment? I will give it another Joe. Anyone for public comment? Going once, going twice?
I'd like to make a comment.
All right, sir. Go ahead. And your name, please.
My name is Eric Bibler.
Yes, sir.
I haven't appeared before this committee for a number of years, but I just wanted to comment to say that, I think that, first of all, I think that Cape Cod is extremely fortunate to have such a competent regional planning agency as the Cape Cod Commission. And I think it's very rare, actually, and it's even more unusual to have an agency that's so competent and staffed by so many talented professionals. And I think the agency itself is extremely receptive to the public and their input. As to the proposed changes to the regional policy plan, I don't think
If you're going to speak on that, we'll ask you to wait until we get to that agenda item, if you don't
Oh,
mind.
sorry, maybe I joined the call a minute late. Am I?
Oh, that's all right, sir. I understand.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
sure.
Anyone else, any items that you want to speak on that are not part of today's agenda? Raise your hand, please. Seeing none, I will move forward. At this time, I'll go for the Executive Director's Report with Christy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Commission members. I just have a few updates for you today, as I know you have a lengthy agenda. I am participating and continuing to participate in our weekly COVID department managers calls, and as well as a member of the Cape Cod Reopening Task Force. We continue to update and upgrade our guidance documents that we provided to the municipalities, and also our COVID resources webpage, as well as the mapping application that we've developed with Cape Cod Healthcare. In response to the pandemic, we engaged the Barnstable County Economic Development Council, and just yesterday we issued a request for proposals for a round of license plate grants. And so these will be grants of up to $25,000 that will be available for municipalities and nonprofit organizations. They would need to show consistency with the comprehensive economic development strategy, but also show some impacts due to this COVID pandemic. So that opportunity is out there. Feel free to pass that along to your networks. The response actually closes on July 10th. And in kind of some more regional news, we have actually been asked to participate in the Esri user conference. So a lot of the GIS technology that we use is a component of Esri, and they have a conference every year that's held virtually this year. And I was asked to participate in one of their panels on climate resiliency. And so that was recorded yesterday, and we anticipate that will be aired in a July timeframe. And then lastly, just wanted to keep you on notice that the commission meetings will be continued to be held virtually until further notice. We will certainly keep you apprised if and when that changes and how we will be looking at meetings in the future. So I will stop there and hand it back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go for our first agenda item, which is the 2019 Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or CEDS, report. Just want to remind everybody, we approved last year the 5-year CEDS for the area. This is just an annual report that's given by the commission. So now I'll ask the staff to give a presentation of the CEDS year 1, which is 2019 annual report.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Jennifer Clinton. I'm a community development planner with the Commission. I've worked with our staff to put together this annual report. We do one every year for the 5-year update to sort of measure the progress that we've had as a region in terms of economic development, how we've done as an agency in coordinating these efforts, and also how we've done on the action plan that the 5-year update sets out. So I wanted to highlight some of the initial economic trends that we highlight at the beginning of the annual report. I need to hide your videos. Okay, so the initial trends that we uncovered while we were doing the data and research on this report. Cape Cod's population has slightly declined over the past 10 years. In 2008, we had about 220,000 year-round residents. So we've seen a slight decline over the past decade. Since 2008, the region has seen an increase in the conversion of year-round homes into second homes, and that has contributed to the housing challenges, the affordability issues that we see today. Average earnings on Cape Cod remain stagnant, even when adjusted for inflation, which is consistent with Massachusetts and the rest of the United States. Housing affordability, climate change impacts, and limited wastewater infrastructure continue to be key challenges to furthering our economic development, and I'll step through some of the data that is standing behind those. And then COVID-19 has also led to these unprecedented economic times. So the county in April was facing a 21.6 unemployment rate, and we are tracking that over time. On our Data Cape Cod website, we have an unemployment dashboard where we've been tracking changes in unemployment specifically related to COVID through May. We also did an analysis to define what Cape Cod's core industries are and our emerging industries. And I'll step through that as well, how we've defined those. The core industries right now are accommodations and food service, retail and healthcare and supporting services. And the 3 emerging industries are arts, entertainment and recreation, construction, and utilities. So this analysis of the core and emerging industries was done using location quotients. And location quotients are a way to quantitatively measure the specialization, economic specialization of a region compared to the rest of the nation. So you'll see on the y-axis what the numbers are a measure of the LQ, the location quotient. So any number over 1 indicates a specialization, and below 1 it's not a specialization for the region. And then the x-axis for percent change, so that shows what the growth in that specialization has been over time. So you can see that the larger the circle is, also those are representative of a larger portion of our employment on Cape Cod. So you see accommodations, retail, and healthcare there. And then the ones that are growing, the ones that are far to the right are utilities, construction, and then that arts, entertainment, and recreation. So for measuring our performance, we wanted to understand how we're doing and what we can do better. And we look at that with 3 different lenses. One is evaluating the region's progress, evaluating that implementation plan that was outlined in the 5-year update, and then evaluating the SEDS-led regional collaboration. So how is the commission doing on their charges? So in terms of evaluating the region's progress, this is where we collected hundreds of different data points in this report. So we wanted to understand many different benchmarks, including our changes in population over time, our wages over time, job creation, in what industries, things like that. So here are some of the highlights from this report. We tracked the percent of Barnstable County's population under 25 and over 65. So you see the dotted line corresponds to the total population, which we have seen that slight 10-year decline. But the left-hand side indicates the percent of the population that falls under those 2 categories. So you can see there's been a decline in the young adults and an increase in the retirement age residents. In terms of our affordability of our housing compared to our average wages, we looked at data provided from the state on what our top industries are. So you see the percent of employment underneath each of these 5 sectors. So these are our top sectors by employment. And we looked at what those average wages are and compared them to the region's median home price and then the median gross rent. So you see, and this is pre-COVID, we have variations of this that show under COVID circumstances with the unemployment rate as it is, how these numbers might change, how many earners you need to have in a household for these given industries in order to make these affordable, or 30% of your income or less. Here's some information about what those core and emerging industries are. So the location quotients, like I said, above 1 indicates a specialization, what our average employment is, how it's changed over time, and how many establishments there are. So we might want to think about how we could grow some of these emerging industries, especially the ones that fall under higher wage brackets, or ones that fall under STEM categories. There's some information in the report about those opportunities. In terms of our regional wealth, we measured a few metrics under well-being, and this includes our affordability of housing. So you can see in the blue bars, that is the median income needed in order to afford a median price home. So this is where your income covers, 30% of your income covers your housing, and that's a HUD designation for affordability. But the yellow bar indicates what the most recent median household income is based on the 2018 American Community Survey. So you can see in every single town that there is a discrepancy ranging from around $6,000 in Sandwich to around $83,000 in Truro, Provincetown, and Chatham. In terms of evaluating our progress on earnings, we do have a slight increase in personal income over time. One of the interesting points for Barnstable County is that our net earnings, so our earnings minus taxes generally, is 51.2% of our total personal income, but that is much less than the percent for the state, which is 64.8%. And conversely, our transfer receipts, which is often tied to retirement, shows 18.6% for the county compared to 14% in Mass. So that's just an indicator that we have a higher percent of our population over 65. And then we see that the median earnings have declined or slightly stagnated over time. And this is a consistent trend since 1990. There are two ways that the Economic Development Administration measures distress, and the designation has actually led to us being declared an economic development district. Barnstable County has, and there's two ways they measure that. One is with unemployment, and the second is per capita income. So if the county's level of regional unemployment is significantly different than the United States over a 24-month average, or the per capita income falls below the national average, they're considered a distressed census tracts. So previously we were around 30% since we last measured, and now we are in 22.1%. So that's related to losing one of the census tracts to their per capita income increased, and it also may be related to population shifts over time. Another way that we're measuring our regional collaboration is what kind of financial resources are we bringing into the region. So at the federal level, we were awarded $2.1 million in the last fiscal year, $370,000 in state grants, and we were able to distribute, $180,000 through the license plate grant fund in collaboration with the BC EDC. I did want to share, if you haven't seen it yet, we are compiling a lot of the information that back up this report in Data Cape Cod. This is initiated through COVID-19 and trying to think about how we could provide economic information that would support recovery. But this is sort of a mix of information from Stats Cape Cod as well as things specifically related to COVID. And then finally, I just wanted to step through what our proposed implementation plan is for year 2. Year 1 is measured and documented in the annual report if you want to see what was completed for that. But in terms of what we're proposing to do over the next fiscal year, we are going to further our work on the regional capital plan. We've started with our scope of work and our budget, and we're going to work on developing what the priorities and funding options are for capital infrastructure and ways that we can find economies of scale for towns to collaborate with each other. Next is local comprehensive planning. In year 1, we did update our LCP regulations, and we're going to continue working with towns to make sure that their LCP updates are consistent with the new regulations. Next is regulating for housing and economic diversity. So we've started looking at what the land use makeup and housing makeup and different data points are for within and surrounding the activity center. So making sure that we're sort of making our growth policy and the regional policy plan come to life, and making sure we're tracking those data points over time. Next is the development of a regional housing plan. We want to make sure that we're supporting sustainable development of affordable housing, since it is such an extreme challenge to Cape Cod, and we'll be leveraging some of the information in the form-based code framework and other work that we've done with Union Studios to understand what kinds of housing options work where and how we can support them as a region. We're going to continue our work on climate change mitigation and adaptation planning, continuing the climate initiative and to inform the development of a climate action plan for the region. We'll continue collecting data and developing climate-related analyses like the storm tide pathways, and continue to support the towns in their local planning efforts, especially with the MVP program and the Green Communities program. Another project would be the development of a regional economic resiliency information clearinghouse. So that would be related to the Data Cape Cod page that I shared, establishing an economic clearinghouse where towns and the region can find a centralized place for information that can inform their planning efforts for both public health and natural disasters and their recovery from them. Another project that we proposed is to further the trades workforce and business development. the Cape Cod Commission is a partner on one particular project that is looking at marine science and technology throughout the Cape and beyond, down through Serpeds region, the adjacent regional planning agency, in collaboration with UMass Dartmouth. So that's just one way that we're trying to think of ways to connect our education system with the workforce that's trying to grow the blue economy and opportunities in STEM. And then finally, our workforce and business retention program. I think this is especially important as we recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, trying to identify what our retention issues are, how to attract businesses and a year-round workforce to Cape Cod. So that will connect with a lot of the other information that we're working on, and we're going to be looking at to collaborate with a lot of regional partners for this one. So that is the annual report in a nutshell. I do want to thank the staff for supporting the development of this. There was a lot of hands that had to go into this. It tackles a lot of data collection and research from many of the different departments at the commission. So this was definitely a group effort, but if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know.
I like your big bushy beard. I like your beard.
I don't know if you know you're unmuted.
That's fine. Thank you, Jennifer. So any of the commissioners have any questions concerning this, or?
I have a question. How come does every single person on the Zoom look like the old guy from Up?
Any of the commissioners have any questions?
I think we may have been hacked, so.
You've not been hacked. You've been infiltrated.
Oh,
Seeing none, Elizabeth?
Woody,
Yes.
I have my hand up.
Yep, I just called on you, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you. I just wondered if I can get a copy of the presentation, because there's a lot of information I could use as we update our open space and recreational plan.
yes, I'd be happy to share that with you.
Thank you very much. Can you send it to me at my town hall address?
Sure, I can follow up with you on that.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any other commissioner before I take a motion?
Mr. Chairman, Jack McCormick.
Yes, Jack.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment on, I think it's an excellent report, and at this time we should probably remind everybody who's watching or listening that all of this data is always available on the website.
Thank you, Jack. So at this time, I'll take a motion to approve the 2019 SEDS annual report and submit the same to the U.S. Economic Development Administration. When you make that,
Excuse me, I have a question. I keep on muting myself, but it keeps
Okay, Charles.
remuting.
Go ahead, Charles.
It's just, do you have any estimate of wealth on the Cape? There's a lot of income-related numbers, but is there anything that estimates wealth, net worth of the population?
We did track the gross domestic product for Cape Cod, and I think in 2018, the last annual value we had, it was at 12.46 billion, which was an increase up from 11.77 billion 5 years previous. There is a section on productivity, so we have some of those data points tracked, but if there's anything that you think should be included that wasn't, please let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, Charles. Can I have a motion to accept the 2019 SEDS annual report and submit it to the U.S. Economic Development Administration?
So moved from Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth. May I have a second?
Second, Jack McCormick.
Thank you, Jack. I'd like all the commissioners to turn on their microphones now, please, and we'll do a roll call vote on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have Fred Chirigotis,
Yes.
Stephen Mealy,
Yes.
Elizabeth Taylor,
Yes.
Tom Wilson,
Yes.
Richard Roy,
Yes.
Murray Brookshire,
Yes.
Charles McCaffrey,
Yes.
Ernest Virgilio,
Yes.
Doug Fromm,
Yes.
Cheryl Andrews,
Yes.
Harold Mitchell,
Yes.
Kevin Grunwald,
Yes.
Richard Elkin, Richard Elkin,
Yes.
thank you. Ron Bergstrom,
Yes.
John Harris,
Yes.
David Whedon.
Yes.
We have 16 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, public hearing pursuant to Chapter C of the Cape Cod Commission regulations. Cape Cod Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, June 25th, 2020 on a citizen's petition entitled Petition to Focus the Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan on Addressing Climate Change, which proposes to amend the 2018 Regional Policy Plan. At this hearing, the Commission may vote to approve or approve with modifications or deny the proposed amendments from the citizen's petition. Anyone wishing to provide oral testimony during this meeting will have an opportunity to do so. If anyone wishes to speak, for those online, just click on the participants box on the bottom of the screen and then click raise hand in the text box. For those who call in by telephone, press *9. I'll recognize you by name when it's time to speak. If anyone is having a technical issue, use either the chat box on your screen or call 508-362-3828 and technical support will assist you. At this time, we'll start with the Commission staff's comments and presentation. I'm going to ask all the commissioners to please mute themselves back into mute now, please, and we'll have that presentation from the staff. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon again, Commission members. Thank you for the opportunity. We listened to all the feedback and comments that you provided at the last hearing, and as a staff went back and took a comprehensive look again at the petition and the proposed amendments to the regional policy plan. We took a look at the existing regional policy plan and all of the work we're currently undertaking to address impacts from climate change. The matter before you today is about choosing the best path to reach a mutual goal. The path is the process, and choosing the right path is crucial. Staff supports and agrees with the intent of the petitioners. I would venture a guess that everybody here today agrees with us that climate change is the planet's greatest challenge, and meaningful action on a regional level is necessary and by any measure late. The Cape Cod Commission Act charges the Cape Cod Commission with developing a balanced regional policy plan. And for 30 years, we have produced and updated a balanced plan that guides our review of developments of regional impact, as well as provides a policy for appropriate growth in the region. But when an issue that's so critical to the well-being of our community arises, we have addressed it head on with individual focused plans like the 208 Water Quality Plan, like the Ocean Management Plan, like the Economic Development Strategy, and the Regional Transportation Plan. The RPP incorporates the framework of these plans and articulates specific aspects that are appropriate for the intended use of the document. The Commission's climate initiative is a comprehensive and inclusive effort to combat climate change that will result in a climate action plan for the region. This is a roadmap for Cape Cod to significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Our greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which is almost completed, will provide the baseline data and information we need to set regional goals and goals that are measurable. The impact of a climate action plan, similar to the 208 plan, will extend far beyond the reach of the regional policy plan. The greenhouse gas inventory will provide that baseline for the region that will allow the Commission to then consider specific emission reduction goals. These can be data-driven and defensible goals that can be then incorporated into the regional policy plan with legitimacy, resulting from a wide range of stakeholders at the table, allowing for some diversity in dialogue. So your professional staff have worked hard and they've proven themselves repeatedly on difficult issues, and we've made addressing climate resiliency an agency-wide priority. And so with that in mind, I would like to walk through each of the 11 proposed petition amendments and staff's analysis about each particular concern can be addressed. So the first proposed change is to the growth policy in the regional policy plan. So the language that's on the screen that's in blue is the additional language that's being proposed by the petition. They're adding the following language: given the threats posed to Cape Cod by climate change, growth and development should be consistent with reducing regional greenhouse gas emissions and increasing natural carbon sequestration on a scale and time frame aligning with targets and limits set under present and future state laws, policies, and regulations. Staff has reviewed this in detail, and proposed change would inappropriately place the focus of the growth policy on only one of the many challenges that we face as a region. The concept is inappropriate for a balanced growth policy. However, it can be addressed in a climate action plan, and it can be addressed in a commission-led process to develop a greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal, objectives, and associated technical guidance. The second change is a proposed amendment to the community design objectives, replacing the existing objective of minimizing the amount of newly disturbed land and impervious surfaces with minimizing the amount of newly disturbed land, vegetation clearing, and impervious surfaces, and promote tree planting and other restorative practices. So staff reviewed this in detail as well, and the substance of this proposed amendment already exists. It actually exists already in the wildlife and plant habitat objectives in the regional policy plan that captures the restoration with native plantings. And similar language is also found within the wildlife and plant habitat and community design technical bulletins. So the next slide actually shows the language that exists in the wildlife and plant habitat technical bulletin that covers this proposed amendment. And the next slide is the existing language in the community design technical bulletin that also addresses the proposed amendment. So this language already exists in both of these. The third of the 11 proposed changes is to the capital facilities and infrastructure goal. At the end of the goal, it adds language stating and minimizing greenhouse gas emissions. So staff's review and analysis of this is that this change would conflict with the Cape Cod Commission's Act's mandate to require adequate capital facilities. And consideration must be given to how this might apply, or more importantly, how it might interfere with infrastructure projects that will be reviewed by the Cape Cod Commission. However, staff does suggest that this concept can be addressed and considered in a climate action plan and in a commission-led process to develop a greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal, objectives, and associated technical bulletin, as well as in a regional capital and infrastructure plan. The fourth amendment proposed is to the transportation goal, adding the following language to the end that minimizes greenhouse gas emissions and accelerates electrification. Staff's review and analysis is that this transportation goal as written focuses on the multimodal system, which supports reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and that the entirety of this proposed amendment is already addressed in the regional transportation plan. So the slides that you'll see next are excerpts from the regional transportation plan. This text is from the climate change resiliency section of the regional transportation plan. The language that's highlighted in red is the exact language that would be addressing the proposed amendment to the regional policy plan. The language on the next slide is also an excerpt from the regional transportation plan. This text is from the Cape Cod Metropolitan Planning Organization's affirmation of the future of transportation in the Commonwealth. And again, the language in red mirrors the language that's proposed in that petition amendment. And I just wanted to articulate also that additionally, as well as it being included in these documents already, this concept can and should be addressed in a climate action plan, as well as in commission-led process to develop a greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal, objectives, and associated technical guidance. So moving on to the fifth proposed change, this is to the energy goal. This changes the goal from the language of providing an adequate, reliable, and diverse supply of energy to serve the communities and economies of Cape Cod to accelerate the transition to 100% renewable energy, minimize greenhouse gas emissions, and provide a secure, adequate, affordable, and reliable supply of energy to serve the communities and economies of Cape Cod. In staff's review and analysis of this, the goal is specifically drafted to be broad, and introducing this level of specificity could be inconsistent with regional needs. However, this concept can also be addressed as part of a larger climate action plan and through a commission-led process to develop a greenhouse gas emissions inventory, greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal, objectives, and associated technical guidance. The sixth proposed amendment is also to an energy objective. This removes the objective to minimize energy consumption through planning and design, energy efficiency and conservation measures, and adds two new objectives: to promote electrification of heating and transportation systems, and promote net zero construction through planning and design, conservation and efficiency measure, and on-site renewable energy. Staff's review and analysis of this particular proposal is that conservation, efficiency, and renewable sources are already addressed in the existing objectives, and electrification of the transportation system is already addressed in the regional transportation plan. Additionally, this concept can be addressed through minor amendments to the community design and energy technical bulletins, and more broadly in a climate action plan and through a commission-led process to develop a greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal, objectives, and associated technical guidance. The seventh proposed amendment is to the housing objective. This adds an additional objective that states promote net zero construction to reduce energy bills and increase affordability. Staff's lengthy review of this is that the purpose of the housing goal and objectives is to promote housing, and this proposed amendment has the potential for conflict with that goal. However, this concept can be further considered in a stakeholder process to develop a climate action plan, as well as a commission-led process to develop a greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal, objectives, and associated technical bulletin. Moving on to the eighth proposed amendment, this is to the renewable energy planning and development section of technical bulletins, changing an item to be considered in future technical bulletin development from siting and building design considerations to accommodate future solar installations to language stating siting, design, and construction considerations to encourage net zero buildings and require solar readiness. Staff's review and analysis is that these existing technical bulletins already require solar installation or solar readiness in a power purchase agreement. The proposed change is to an identified future RPP action. This can be accommodated through technical bulletin drafting and updating process, and these concepts can be addressed through minor amendments to the community design and energy technical bulletins. Moving on to the ninth proposed amendment, this is the proposed amendment to considerations to be included in a regional capital plan. And this is adding the following: decarbonization, support and invest in electricity, communications, transportation, and other infrastructure that reduces the Cape's reliance on fossil fuels, increases energy efficiency, and accelerates progress toward 100% renewable energy. Staff's review and analysis of this is that the greenhouse gas inventory, once completed, will inform the regional capital plan as it's developed and may be able to help target sectors to decarbonize. So this concept can be addressed through the regional capital planning process. It can be addressed in the climate action plan and in a commission-led process to develop a greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal, objectives, and associated technical guidance. The 10th proposal is an amendment to the regional performance measures. Would add the following additional measure under greenhouse gas emissions. Rapid and substantial emission reductions at all levels are necessary to prevent the worst effects of climate change. Increases or decreases in regional emissions over time will show whether Cape Cod is doing its part. And so staff has has recommended that a greenhouse gas emissions inventory needs to be completed before we can near the establishment of a baseline and measure performance. The process to establish that baseline is near completion, as I've mentioned, and the concept can be addressed in a regional capital climate action plan, as well as a commission-led process to develop a greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal, objectives, and technical guidance and other actions. And the final proposed amendment is to the climate change response, readiness, and mitigation in the regional planning actions. So this changes the action relative to the greenhouse gas emissions inventory to develop an estimated baseline of greenhouse gas emissions for the region using available models and data, to develop an inventory of anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions and estimate natural carbon fluxes for the region using available models and data, benchmark results against the state's annual inventory and emissions reduction targets, identify priority emission reduction and carbon sequestration strategies and measures, and take a leadership role in advancing comprehensive energy climate planning policy and regulation for Cape Cod. So as I've mentioned, the inventory is in development. And so based on the method, and it's based on methodology that was established by staff and has been reviewed through a lengthy review process by a well-qualified review committee. And so policy decisions would need to rely on the results of that inventory and the availability of data. And we're suggesting this concept should also be addressed by the Commission's Climate Action Plan. So that is a detailed analysis of all 11 of the proposed amendments. I want to thank you for your patience, but I did want to review those in some detail so that you understand and recognize that Commission staff have really completed a thorough and comprehensive analysis of the proposal. We've received comments in support of the petitioner's actions, and the substance of many of the comments are similar. Much of the language is identical. They all want to see climate action, and we look forward to their active participation in our climate action initiative. It's clear from our actions to date that people want action through our efforts, but we need to make sure it's real action with measurable results. A climate action plan is what the Commission does best. We tackle the difficult issues facing our region. We conduct extensive community engagement and outreach, and we find actionable measures and solutions to our greatest challenges. We've been successful in addressing some of our biggest challenges because our commitment to transparency, to public participation, and through the dedication of your professional staff. So I would urge you to support the effort that's underway to engage our community with a singular focus on climate action, a focus and prominence that the issue really deserves, and a community engagement process that our citizens deserve. The blueprint for creating a regional framework for action on difficult issues was created at the Cape Cod Commission. It's part of our DNA. And we urge you at this point to deny the petition that's before you, not because we disagree with the intent of the petitioners, but because we hold ourselves to the highest standards of inclusion and deliberation, and our history and experience informs us that progress requires consensus. I want to also let you know that our Deputy Director, our Chief Regulatory Officer, our Chief Planner, our Commission Counsel, our Natural Resources Manager, our Transportation Manager, they are all responsible for collectively drafting the staff report and the comments that are before you. They're here today, that's your senior leadership team, to answer any questions that you may have. And I'm happy to answer any questions when you're ready. So thank you.
Thank you, Christy. At this time, I'll ask for the petitioner to make any comments they might have. Chris, you spoke last time. Do you have any comment?
Yeah, I'm glad to speak. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So in these comments, I want to address some misperceptions and misdirections from the last meeting and since then. I do think that the presentation Christy just gave is a fantastic assemblage of important actions and policies and guidelines included in myriad documents, and it's important to pull them all together. I think the petitioners think the RPP itself is the place to do that. and not in ancillary documents. Citizens drafted and submitted the RPP amendments to address shortcomings in the Commission's RPP development and review process, not as a political ploy, as was suggested. Individual amendments may not be perfect in terms of the exact wording or placement, but collectively they represent a necessary response to the existential threats posed by climate change and our climate emergency. These amendments are not going to harm our economy or our quest for affordable housing or more housing, but they will improve whatever gets built. They also are not going to lead to a rush of onshore wind projects, which Cape Codders have rejected. And to the extent that large-scale solar projects continue to be brought forward that involve extensive land clearing, they should improve outcomes and result in the denial of some of those projects. And so I think the concerns from some that this is going to result in a rush of change are incorrect. And so the current RPP was developed through a public process involving several years of stakeholder outreach and analysis by the Commission. In spring 2020, this included meetings of the Commission's RPP subcommittee held to review and discuss goals, objectives, and potential updates and changes in issue areas relating to natural and built and community systems. These subcommittee meetings provided opportunity for direct real-time public input on the most critical elements in the RPP, but they ended without any discussion of the energy goal and objectives, and thus of emission reduction objectives. That was unfortunate. It would be interesting to know why the subcommittee process moved on when it did. The majority of public comments that were submitted on the draft RPP focused on strengthening energy and emission reduction goals and objectives. In response to specific comments, the Commission added development of a regional greenhouse gas emission inventory as a regional planning action. That was an important advance in the final RPP, attributable to feedback from citizens. And this is one, obviously, that the Commission proudly takes ownership of, and well it should. But this would not have happened without pressure from citizens. The other climate-related changes that were made to the final RPP were, to coin a phrase, gilding the lily, acknowledging threats posed by greenhouse gas emissions, but not updating the goals and objectives that set the framework for regional planning, policy, and regulation. And that was unfortunate. Pursuant to the provisions of the Cape Cod Commission Act, the process enabling citizens to amend the RPP was established by a Barnstable County ordinance and is included in the Commission's regulations. This was not an end around or some effort by members of the public to hijack a process. What we did was follow what was provided to citizens by our intelligent decision makers almost 30 years ago. Once the Commission reviews on each amendment herein, all the amendments, whether you approve, review, or deny them, do move forward to the Barnstable County Assembly of Delegates. Your May 28 hearing allowed for presentation of and justification for the amendments, staff presentations and recommendations against the amendments, oral testimony, all in support of more aggressive regional and local action on climate change, and member discussion, very thoughtful member discussion. It's unfortunate that the Commission has not made a video of the hearing available, especially because the minutes of the May 28 hearing do not represent a fair and balanced depiction of the arguments presented, and this will taint the public record that will be considered by the Assembly. In a June 22nd memo, Commission staff state, when considering changes to the RPP that could have broad implications for all land uses and development on Cape Cod, these discussions should take place in an inclusive and open public hearing process that allows all of the public to participate in real-time discussions about any proposed language changes. For this reason, Commission staff has not met with any particular group prior to the upcoming hearing, that is today's hearing. And this does represent a sound rationale for Commission staff not reaching out to petitioners between May 28 and today. But it's important to note that commission staff participated in an early June board meeting of the Cape Cod Climate Change Collaborative, where they made clear that they would continue to resist the RPP amendments, triggering extensive discussion about relations between the RPP and the Commission's Cape Cod Climate Initiative and Planned Climate Action Plan. That was inappropriate, considering the guidelines that are set forth by the Commission to not have interaction with the public outside of a hearing process. I believe a regional climate action plan is worthy of everybody's support, and I think that all of the petitioners share that idea, especially though as the means of organizing and accelerating progress towards goals and objectives that are embedded within the RPP. Without this, we are years away from meaningful progress driven by an action plan. Getting these goals and objectives and targets in the RPP will set the bar for local comprehensive planning and thus make a huge difference in construction across the Cape and development across the Cape, not just in the large projects that the Commission regulates. Contrary to claims presented at last month's hearing, the RPP amendment process is not about advancing a narrow agenda or controlling messaging. Citizens want policy and regulation consistent with cutting emissions and mitigating current and future threats posed to Cape Cod's economy and environment. I and other petitioners certainly would welcome the opportunity for real-time discussion about any and all proposed amendments today or perhaps going forward. Regardless, as representatives of local communities and citizens of all ages, the hope is that commissioners will use this process to show climate leadership by approving RPP amendments that will sharpen regional and local focus on addressing the climate emergency and protecting the Cape's past, present, and future. I think that Christy is extremely accurate to say that we do all share the same goals. I think petitioners would like to see these goals embedded in regional planning, policy, and regulation, and then in local planning, policy, and regulation, so we can be sure that progress is made. And so thanks for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open up for the commissioners for any opening statements that they might have, any questions they want to ask. Any of the commissioners that would like to speak. For those online, just click on the participants box in the bottom of the screen and then click raise your hand. The text box, I will call on you. When I call on you, just you'll have that time to speak. Looking over the list of people, I see Dick Elkin. Dick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Chris, for that presentation, and Christy for the staff presentation. As I look at the staff's presentation, and as an alternative to changing the RPP, my first question is, why not do both? The staff's presentation says, here are the things we're doing, here are the things we could be doing, and here are the places where the existing RPP might contradict these goals. Well, if we're already doing it, this will just provide more emphasis. Things we could be doing, I'm concerned about because there's no guarantee we will do them. We only could do them. So putting this in the RPP might make it more certain that we do accomplish these goals. And in the case where these goals contradict the existing document, I think we have to take a very hard look to decide which side of that conflict we want to come down on. But I think that if some goal contradicts greenhouse gas reduction, that's going to take a very hard look. I'd like to say a little bit more about this climate change plan. When I first heard about the climate change plan, it exclusively addressed adaptation, not greenhouse gas reduction. Now it's been discussed as it could be greenhouse gas reduction as well as adaptation. That's fine. I haven't heard anything about what its goals are and which direction it's going. And this plan doesn't yet exist, so we can't tell what it's going to do, and I don't think it can substitute for the changes at the highest level, which indicate the direction we wish to go in. I think we can do both. We can have all the lower level details as explained by the staff and the high level guidance as presented by the petitioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Coming up next, I'll go to Tom Wilson, and after Tom, I'll go to Cheryl Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Christy, and thank you, Chris, for your feedback. I have a couple of questions. In terms of a climate action plan, what kind of timeline is around for that? As I listened to Christy's presentation, what I took away from it was that the greenhouse gas inventory, which the commission is working on now, needs to be completed, and that's happening shortly. And after it's completed, then we could use data to set goals and objectives. But and so I kind of understood that to be part of the climate action plan. But my concern is, for me, there's a real sense of urgency to react to the citizens' petition and to incorporate climate mitigation efforts into the work that the commission does. So what kind of time frame would we be looking at in terms of a climate action plan being realized?
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Christy, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. Certainly, we have already initiated the climate project, and we were working already on a climate action plan. We've held multiple stakeholder meetings in the fall, and certainly intend to pick those up. And so where we would like to have more of an emphasis now is completing the greenhouse gas emissions inventory. Our committee that's been reviewing the methodology and the data collection will be reviewing the finalized greenhouse gas emissions inventory within the next coming weeks. And so we're looking forward to completing that and then engaging with you and engaging with the larger stakeholder groups to make sure that we set measurable goals as part of that climate action plan. So to kind of succinctly answer your question, it's immediate. We need to make sure that that climate action plan is something that happens immediately, and we're committed to doing that work. There's a lot of work, but the data and setting that baseline is critical to be able to actually measuring what our goals are. And so a lot of that work can be eventually incorporated into the regional policy plan, but we need to set goals with the data that is most important to the crux of the issue, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
So my second question is, how would you describe the linkage between the regional policy plan and local comprehensive plans in terms of updating things to include net zero construction and more energy efficient new construction on the Cape? If some of the changes that were proposed by the citizens petition were included in the regional policy plan as an update to the 2008 plan, would that directly affect local comprehensive plans and start a movement to bring about some of these climate mitigation efforts?
Christy?
Yes, thank you. And I also wanted to just make sure that our Chief Regulatory Officer and Chief Planner may want an opportunity to respond to this as well. But as you know, local comprehensive planning across all 15 communities is in various states. We have some that have local comprehensive plans that are extremely outdated, some that have more updated ones. We recently updated our guidance in the hope that communities will update their local comprehensive plans. But as you know, there's no requirement that they do this and that they come through the Cape Cod Commission process for approval of those plans.
Okay, thank you.
Cheryl Andrews, and then after that, I'll go to Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a comment and then I have a question for our staff. The comment is because we get a lot of input for these public hearings, sometimes even the day of the hearing. And one particular letter that we received really spoke to me. It struck me as rather unusual. And that was a memo we received dated yesterday from the Association to Preserve Cape Cod. And I would just like to read 2 sentences from it. It says, as the Cape Cod region contemplates emerging from the current pandemic and restarting the economy, let's seize this opportunity to examine what we can change so that we don't follow the same mistakes that led us to this growing climate crisis. The proposed amendments are a good and timely first step. And this was signed by their executive director, Mr. Gottlieb. And as I said, that that one was printed out by me and read a few times. And following that comment, I have a question for staff. I heard the proponent say that the video for our last meeting was not available. And so which is kind of unusual because that was a month ago. Is there an issue with that video being available?
I would actually ask our technical staff. We typically make the minutes available, and the recordings are available, I think, as necessary. Can I see if council or our technical staff can weigh in on that?
This is David Still. The video for that was processed and sent to IT a number of weeks ago. I followed up with them. It has not posted. I do not have an answer as to why.
But we'll certainly look into that.
Do we know when the date of, so we don't have a date for the Assembly of Delegates because that would be after we're finished with it, is that right?
Correct. You haven't taken an action on this.
All right. And if we did act today, do we know when it would go to the Assembly of Delegates?
If you take action today, you would direct staff to draft a memorandum and that would go to the Assembly of Delegates as soon as we're able to get that to them.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Kevin and then Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't normally bring prepared comments to these meetings, but I have some points that I wanted to make sure that I made. So I did write up some notes for myself. As I said at the last meeting, I was impressed by the passion and the knowledge of the people who support these proposed amendments. I've heard it in the presentation, I've seen it in the comments, and I really appreciate their commitment to this critical issue. Their comments have been informed and respectful. There was one speaker at the last public hearing who did encourage commission members, I believe, to vote their own conscience rather than to do what the staff tells us. And anybody who's familiar with this commission knows that that's exactly what we do. So I did find that to be both uninformed and disrespectful. But that being said, I really appreciate the input that have been provided by the petitioners. The suggestion, I'm troubled by the implication of these amendments that the RPP doesn't make climate change enough of a priority. I'm the chair of the Truro Housing Authority, and I work closely with housing advocates throughout Cape Cod. People here are deeply concerned about the issue of the availability of affordable housing. It's really a keystone issue on the Cape in terms of our economy, in terms of the ability of people to live here. And I'm pretty sure that we could draft an amendment to the RPP that would focus on mitigating, being more aggressive at mitigating the availability of affordable housing. I think that we could easily get 300 people to sign that petition and bring that amendment to the commission. I also know that there are people in my town who are very concerned about the issue of how we handle wastewater on the Cape. And we know, again, that that's a critical issue. There are people I've talked to who worry that they're going to wake up one day and we're not going to have any water that we can drink. And that is obviously going to have a huge impact on a number of aspects of our lives as well. So I think that they could also draft an amendment suggesting that the RPP be more aggressive in mitigating the issue of wastewater management on the Cape. And I'm pretty sure they could get 300 signatures for that as well. So I think
if we look at the RPP, we have a lot of issues that are touched on in there that I think there are a lot of special interest groups that feel very strongly about. I think the commission could adopt all of these proposed amendments. And I think in the end, what we would be left with would not be an RPP, but a patchwork quilt of amendments, not a coherent plan. I think it would be unmanageable, lacking consistency, and a broad shared development for broad shared vision for development on Cape Cod. The RPP that was adopted by the Commission in 2018 was adopted unanimously by this Commission. It represents many hours of work, countless revisions, and input from staff, Commission members, and people throughout the community. I think the process was excellent, and I think we ended up with a really good product. If the plan neglected to address the issue of climate change, I would feel differently about these amendments. But I think in Christie's presentation, she really did a good job of showing how addressing the issue of climate change is woven throughout this plan in a number of different areas. In thinking about our last meeting a month ago, I realized that I believe 4 commissioners who are currently on the commission were not part of our group when the RPP was adopted. And so I'm not sure that they have a full appreciation for all of the steps and the full process that went into this final product. But it was certainly taking into account stakeholder concerns as well as much input from both the subcommittee and the full committee of the full commission. So I believe that in the end, when we look at this, it's not perfect, but what we have is a document that provides us with the flexibility and means to address challenges as they arise. And I think Christie's presentation on the Commission's Climate Action Plan is a good example of how that can be done. We have the ability to do that through technical bulletins as well. So I, again, would strongly encourage my fellow commissioners to vote against these proposed amendments. I think they're unnecessary. I think they're redundant. And I think that we have a plan and a process that will serve us well to address this critical issue. And thank you for this time.
Thank you. Next up will be Stephen Mealy and then David Wheaton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposal before the Commission as a continuation of our meeting for May 28th requests that the Commission make certain changes to the 2019 Regional Policy Plan, or RPP, by adopting several changes to mitigate climate change by reducing greenhouse gases. We can't discuss climate change without the inclusion of greenhouse gases. The current RPP identifies climate change as one of the key challenges facing in the region, putting Cape Cod's shoreline, homes, businesses, and community infrastructures at risk. It includes a section on climate change responses, readiness and mitigation, and planning actions to support renewable energy development and advance green community designations. The petition under discussion infuses greenhouse gas reduction and mitigation in 11 major areas throughout the RPP. And I recognize the work and research that was invested into the proposed changes and additions. And I recognize and understand the need to address climate change and thus greenhouse gases. To quote a piece that was recently published and prepared by Mr. Boyke and other members of the petition submission, the current RPP does an excellent job in identifying adverse impacts and future threats posed by climate change, as well as promoting measures for building resiliency through climate adaptation. It also highlights the scientific consensus that dramatic emission reductions are required by 2030 in order to avoid worst-case scenarios. However, I think the disagreement seems to fall within the current RPP's approach to planning and regulation for future construction and infrastructure projects. And as proposed, the amendments would, using Chris's words, sharpen the Commission's focus on reducing fossil fuel consumption and cutting greenhouse gas emissions by aligning the Cape's growth and development policy with the Commonwealth's net zero objectives. It would do this by promoting and in some cases requiring net zero construction, solar-ready building construction, electric vehicles and transportation, among other new regulations. As a commissioner representing one town, Bourne, I feel that some of the proposed changes should be incorporated into the RPP. I also feel that the current RPP goals and objectives are not as claimed a business as usual approach to planning and regulation. The Cape Cod Commission Act requires the preparation and timely updating of the regional policy plan that provides regional planning policies and objectives to guide development and protect our region's resources. The RPP identifies climate change as a key regional challenge facing our natural, built, and community systems. It poses threats to the region, including sea level rise, increased storm activity, and increased temperatures. These threats can cause loss of life, damage to buildings and infrastructure, impair coastal environments, and otherwise impact a community's economic, social, and environmental well-being. Many of you have heard these statements before. We are all aware of these threats, and that's why we're all here today. I note that the RPP includes a Cape Cod Commission planning action to encourage and engage communities to better understand regional gas emissions. Under the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventory Initiative, to develop an estimated baseline for greenhouse gas emissions for the region and using available models and data. This baseline can provide our communities with the information to understand and contributing factors to Cape Cod's greenhouse gas emissions that will help communities better understand opportunities for mitigation. A draft inventory of this is due this summer, shortly from now. I suggest that the completion of the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventory Initiative is timely for our discussions today. And I would urge the Commission members today to take the next steps in requesting that the Commission staff, within the identified time certain period, to undertake and include specific changes to the RPP where appropriate to reinforce the Commission's undertaking of taking the leadership in mitigation of climate change by reducing greenhouse gases in conjunction with the existing RPP goals and objectives. This tax may incorporate some or much of the proposed amendments. The inclusion must recognize the Commission's responsibility of meeting all of our goals and objectives, and it may be included within other parts of the RP as presented today. As one of those responsibilities we have, I mentioned that Cape Cod is a home to over 210,000 residents. One of the other challenges the residents of Cape Cod is facing is housing, affordable housing. We are seeing a decline in the shift of our population with the number of retired above state's average.
Stephen, you're freezing up. And Stephen has frozen up. I will go to David Whedon at this time and come back to Stephen for another one. David, and then I'll follow up with David from Ron. David?
Hello, everyone. I just want to start off by thanking everyone for their presentations thus far. And I'll continue in saying that, you know, I too really respect the commission staff and all the work that they do. And I feel as though they do a great job. I do respect all the people that have signed the petition and put work into the suggested changes. And I think they bring a level of professionalism to the conversation. And I would encourage that we incorporate some of those changes. I do disagree that, you know, some of the issues should wait and utilized or implemented through a climate action plan. I think the RPP as a document is the document that guides towns, and as towns review their local comprehensive plans, they incorporate those the language in that, you know, in their local planning. So I would encourage that to be used as the main mechanism, not the climate action plan as a supplementary document. The other matter that I had was that because we're in a climate emergency, I feel as though any language that we can put into this current RPP, we need to do that now. I'm not in favor of waiting for, you know, additional information and compiling data relative to the greenhouse gas emissions, to begin to put together language to guide that process. Everyone knows that we're in a state of emergency, and because decarbonization, the effects aren't contained within local, or municipal, or regional boundaries. It's a worldwide issue. You know, so decarbonization on any level is going to help the problem, the larger problem that the world is facing. So I ask that, you know, we do consider some of the language to be incorporated. I think it was done really well, and would encourage that the other commissioners also are supportive of, you know, supplementing the language to bolster the already the document that's already been accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Ron?
Yeah, I'd like to continue in the same vein as Commissioner Whedon. I don't think we have to wait to take an inventory of current emissions in order to set future goals. Those goals are going to be a percentage anyway, 50% reduction by a certain time, 100% reduction by a certain time. So it's not, we don't have to wait to see what we're producing now in order to set goals for the future, because those goals are going to be done on a percentage basis. The other comment I have is that I welcome petition articles like this, even though they represent a small percentage of the Cape's population. This is how citizens make their feelings known. I know the commission does extensive outreach, has public hearings and so on in creating the regional policy plan, and every 5 years or so. But nonetheless, the idea of citizens approaching the commission with the petition article is something written into the rules, and I certainly appreciate the efforts of those who put forward this petition. And the other thing is that, you know, we can battle over the language all we want, but it's really the people in charge who can make the decisions, and that's the commissioners themselves. No matter what language we put in, it's our personal dedication to mitigating the effect of climate change and the emissions of greenhouse gases that are going to make the difference. And no matter how exact we make the language, there's still going to be a necessity of interpreting that language and encouraging the mitigation of greenhouse gases that are going to be the responsibility of us ultimately in the future. So I appreciate the staff participation, and I appreciate the petition articles, and we'll have to see. You know, I think there are some things that in there that are already being addressed, but I think there is also some language in the RPP that can be strengthened by including these petition articles. So thank you.
Thank you. Did Stephen make it back in? Did he? Stephen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to finish up by suggesting that the completion of the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventory Initiative is timely for our discussions today. And I would urge to the members today to take the next step in requesting that the Commission staff, with an identified time-certain period, undertake and include specific changes to the RPP where appropriate to reinforce the Commission's undertaking the leadership in mitigating climate change by reducing greenhouse gases in conjunction with existing RPP goals and objectives. This task may incorporate some or much of the proposed amendments. The inclusion must recognize the Commission's responsibility for meeting all of our goals and objectives, and may be included within other parts of the RPP as presented today. As one of those responsibilities, I'll mention that Cape Cod is the home to over 210,000 residents. And one of our other challenges to residents of Cape Cod is housing, affordable housing. We are seeing a decline or shift in our population, with the number of retired adults continues above our state's average, and younger adults continue to be underrepresented when compared with those of the rest of the state. Our goals and objectives must take into consideration these types of challenges when contemplating requirements of building construction, siting, etc. Incorporating net zero greenhouse gas mitigation and other specific remedies must be taken with all of our needs. And this may be accomplished by making changes to the objectives within the RPB, but additionally to technical bulletins or other regulatory guidance documents. I wish to extend my thanks to Mr. Boykley and all those who had prepared the suggested amendments. The RPP can be a challenging document to work with at times, and I recognize the hard work and also suggest that this is a reawakening in some aspects to bringing it to the forefront for the public, a concern shared by all of us here today, and I thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stephen. Charles, and then we'll close off this area of questioning. Charles McCaffrey.
Let me unmute. I'll be brief. I very much agree with what Stephen just said. I think that staff should be able, given the agreement with the general intention of the petitioner's amendments, to craft language that reflects some of that intention in ways that fit the nature and design of the regional policy plan. So I was surprised that the petitioner's articles did not result in staff making any suggested word changes. I don't expect them. I would not have expected the changes to be accepted whole, but I expected that they would inspire some improvements to the existing language in the regional policy plan.
Okay, thank you, Charles. At this time, we'll close the commissioner's opening statements and we'll move on to public testimony. If anyone wishes to speak, for those online, click on the participants box at the bottom of the screen, and then click raise your hand in the text box. For those who have called in by telephone, press *9. I'll recognize you by your name when it's time to speak. If anyone's having a technical issue, use either the chat box on your screen or call 508-362-3828, and technical support will assist you. There will be I'm not going to put a limit yet on the amount of time people can speak. I'll hold that right for myself in case we do get a lot of people wishing to speak. I'm going to start with public officials, and I see a couple on the list already. We'll start with Walter North from the Orleans Conservation, and then Gordon Starr from Barnstable Town Council.
Chairman Mitchell, thank you so much for hosting this meeting. I've been incredibly impressed at the quality of the discussion and the excellent commitment that's represented by the many statements the commission made. I had wanted to address the substance, but listening to the commissioners, I guess I agree with them. I left the last public hearing that we had with the impression that the direction from the commission to the staff was to try to find a way forward to accommodate some of these concerns in a way that was consistent with the vision of the regional plan. And I very much hope that you can put in place a process that would enable us to do that. I was a little bit surprised and perplexed at the staff's comments about the offer that was made by the petitioners to have a discussion that suggested we weren't willing to have a discussion in a public forum. That's not accurate. We'd be very happy to do this in a collaborative, public way, but I would like us to see that these concerns do get appropriately incorporated in the document. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Gordon Starr, and then I'll go to Wendy Northcross.
Wait a second, let me, good afternoon. My name is Gordon Starr. I'm a town councilor from Barnstable. And I'm basically here to support the petition and all the amendments that were as they're written. I think it would add to the document. I agree with Dick Elkins that there's an urgency to the climate change problem. There's too much talk about the climate change, the Cape Cod Climate Initiative, and it's just, it's not defined for me. You know, Christy keeps saying we could do it in the climate plan, but there is no climate plan. So, and I'm not sure where that's going. Is it going to be on the same level as, say, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy group? Is it going to be the same as the Ocean Management Plan? Is it going to be on the same level as the Regional Transportation Plan? So I think we need to move forward and accept the language as it is. We all share the same goal. And I think so the resistance to these amendments is just a little baffling to me because it just makes the whole document a little stronger. Especially, I know in Barnstable, we don't have a local comprehensive plan and we haven't had one for 10, I mean, we have one, but it's 10 years old. So eventually we need to dive back into that before the next RPP is written. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'll go to Wendy Northcross and then Lisa after. Wendy?
Mr. Chair, I have submitted a written comment that was approved by my board of directors, and I won't read that to you, but I will let you know that it was a very lively discussion that we had relative to our position, which is very clearly we fall on the side of supporting sustainable economic development, climate adaptation, and we're very committed to helping our business community do that and get there. In fact, we've renamed our Economic Development Committee the Sustainable Economic Development Pillar, and are pivoting some of that work going forward. I do want to just say we are a little bit concerned about this process. We are very involved with the shaping and the rewriting, updating of the 2018 version of the regional policy plan, and in our view, it struck a good balance between the environment and the economy. Don't have to tell you that we are currently in a climate, no pun, climate of extreme economic dislocation, and the Cape is going to have to be hard at work to reinvent itself and to move forward. We're going to have to do this on multiple fronts. We're going to have to worry about our sustainability. We're going to have to worry about our, in terms of people's employment and the very land that we live on. So we find both of those things equally important, and one does not trump the other. But we would love to be continue to be part of this conversation. We were trying to do that through the climate action plan and the mapping of greenhouse gases and emissions and coming up with some of these benchmarks. I just want to say that the Cape, you know, while we're showing signs of strength, our economy is starting to reawaken. We still don't have all the answers here, and we're going to have to reinvent ourselves in some ways that are exciting, but very dynamic. And we've basically taken a leap of about 10 years into the future now. So we're here to listen and to share and to participate. And we're a little concerned about just strengthening the climate piece of the regional policy plan when we have a lot of other very pressing issues at the same time. So we're clearly on the record of supporting the work of the Cape Cod Commission and the climate adaptation and sustainability of Cape Cod. And but we think that petitions are there to move an issue, and we see the issue is moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Next, Elisa.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. The irony is that I did a ribbon cutting for 8 units yesterday. On a 3/4 acre, we built 8 units in Hyannis. And it took us several years, and it was very expensive. So any obstacles in the way of building housing is just going to slow production down and continue to keep the prices elevating. The 6 of the people who moved in the households were young professionals. And it's because we were able to keep our construction costs in check that we could pass that savings on to them. And when I hear that that maybe the feeling here and the trend here is to take this wording that's been proposed and just and add it in. But I hope that you will consider and balance all of the needs of the region and keep housing advocates and developers as part of the conversation. We understand at Housing Assistance Corporation and appreciate the need to balance the environment and housing, and we have demonstrated that throughout our history and continue to with our projects that we're working on with APCC. In fact, we also have a weatherization department to help keep utilities low for low to mid-income households. But I believe from a housing perspective, the RPP is balanced. And I just hope that as you move forward, that we continue to think of housing and balance all of the issues, because the unintended consequence of making the construction too high and limiting the access for developers to build small infill projects or affordable housing at any size is going to mean that we have less housing available, and we're going to keep the price too high for regular Cape Codders. So I also submitted comments, written comments from me and my board that you have avail. And I, again, appreciate the opportunity to speak here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. At this time, I'm going to start moving forward with public comment. Once again, if anyone wishing to speak, raise your hand and I will contact you. I'll call you by name when it's time to speak. I'm going to ask that you keep your comments short, specific, and that way I do not see a need to impose a limit on the amount of time people are speaking. We do have 6 or 7 people that are wishing to speak at this time. I will start with David Dow, and then I will move to Keith. Now, when I see one name, I'm going to ask that you please identify yourself before you speak. So at this time, we'll move to David Dow, who will speak first, and then I will move to Keith. David?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I live in East Falmouth, and I'm a retired marine scientist and grassroots environmental activist. I participated in the fall meeting in the Mashpee Library on the Climate Action Plan dialogue for the Cape Cod Commission. It reminded me of the process that we had to reduce nitrogen loading from septic systems in developing town targeted wastewater management plans or comprehensive wastewater management plans between multiple towns. And as you know, this process has moved very slowly, and there are very few towns in Cape Cod that actually have state-approved plans and then have begun implementing action. So my concern about this is that we deal with a climate emergency, that we need to have action quicker than the normal business as usual process. If we hope to meet standards that the state's going to roll out in 2030 for the state climate action plan. So in more recent times, I've been commenting on the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management environmental impact statement for the Martha's Vineyard wind farm and wind farms, 20 wind farms throughout the Atlantic seaboard, and also on the North Atlantic right whale, lobster, deer, and mortality entanglement controversy. And since both of these are moving slowly and have impacts on that involve wind farms as well, it seemed to me that we have to move forward quickly if we're going to get all these planning and processes into regulations and then into taking action through a process that begins with the Cape Cod Commission Regional Policy Plan and ends with state and federal approval and implementation money.
Mr. Dow, are you complete? All right, I'm going to move forward with Keith, and then next up will be, I'm going to jump out of order here because I do have a town official, F. Thomas, after that. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you to you and the other commissioners. My name is Keith Lewison. I'm a resident of Sandwich. I'd like to speak, make 2 brief comments. One, as a volunteer representative of the Sierra Club. Sierra Club of Massachusetts has submitted a letter on these amendments, supporting them universally. I'll read a brief excerpt from that letter, and the rest is in your files. But on behalf of the 100,000 members and supporters of Massachusetts Sierra Club chapter, as well as the Cape Cod group, we endorse the proposed amendments to the Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan and encourage the Cape Cod Commission to take leadership in helping local communities reach net zero emissions as rapidly as possible. Sierra Club urges the Commission to assume leadership on climate mitigation by approving and implementing the amendments proposed to the Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan. That letter is signed by Deb Pasternak, the chapter director of Sierra Club, Massachusetts, as well as myself as the chair of the Cape Cod group. Secondly, I'd like to just comment briefly, not as a Sierra Club member, but as a resident of Cape Cod. I've been here most of my whole life. At 40, I was born Cape Cod Hospital, and the climate crisis has been in the background of my life the entire time. But it's only very recently that we're really taking serious note of it. Secondly, as we talk about other important issues like wastewater, those issues were discussed in seriousness as early as the 1960s and 70s. So what worries me personally is the speed at which we're able to address these very important matters. And I would hope that by supporting and adopting these amendments, we can move with the necessary speed that it will take to deal with this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So F. Thomas Vidal.
Thank you. I'm speaking mostly as the town planner for Mashpee for 34 years until a couple of years ago. In looking at doing a local comprehensive plan, which we did, we're supposed to be consistent with the regional policy plan. And a lot of what we had to do was basically repeat stuff that was in the regional policy plan. I'm disappointed that the commission staff looks like they've basically taken the position of finding excuses not to include any of these very intelligent proposals in the RPP. Bottom line is that they need to be in the RPP if they're going to have any effect, because all of those minor plans, side plans, I mean, I didn't even read most of them when I was a planner. They need to be in the RPP so that people will see them. That will be the position that the commission takes, and that the local comprehensive plans will be consistent with. That's the document, as some of the commissioners said, not these little side plans, especially some that are just like proposed, maybe we'll do a side plan. So that's the bottom line of my statement. I support these changes, and I really believe they should be in the RPP. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to break rank one more time. I know Tom Caher is here. He's on his iPad. Mr. Caher, if you would like to speak, and then I'll go to Samuel Alexander.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for allowing me to provide a little bit of some of my thoughts. I also want to compliment Chris and Christy for their presentations at the outset. They were, I thought, informative, polite, and helpful in terms of where the region is going. And I've had an opportunity to review the 11 amendments, and I think a lot of them are well thought out. And there's no question that climate change is one of the greatest challenges of our time. And as a transportation leader, you know, I really try to focus actively on all issues related to climate change. Here at the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority, we've been committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and taking action on progressing climate change initiatives for a while now, several years, because over 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions come directly from the transportation sector. And so we've taken that very seriously and worked very, very closely with the commission and the commission staff. And they've been enormously helpful in guiding us in a lot of different areas. In the past 2 years, we've achieved some significant accomplishments here at the RTA. We had 900 solar panels at both our Hyannis Transportation Center and operations facility in Dennis, which reduced 90% of our energy demand. We put glass shelters you may have seen across Cape Cod that include solar panels. We have a wind turbine down at our Dennis Operations Center. We have 20 electric vehicle charging stations at the HTC. And most recently, Senator Spilka asked me to participate on a Senate working group, and I was on the Sustainability Commission, excuse me, the Sustainability Subcommittee, working on legislation and proposals that promote net zero efforts and zero emission vehicles and the like. So we are cognizant of the importance, and I wanted to say that we work so closely with the Commission, and they have been incredibly instrumental in every one of our enormous climate change efforts, both in planning and advocacy, and of course, resource generation perspective. We have monthly meetings, well, actually it's bi-weekly meetings with their staff. And we've worked together on the Cape Cod Climate Change Collaborative, and we participated in the Net Zero Conference together. So I kind of think that the Commission has already dedicated and prioritized a lot of things that already exist, such as the Cape Cod Resiliency Initiative, as well as the Climate Initiative. So I just wanted to say in summary, I guess, that I do support the intention to address climate change, but would like to just reiterate that I believe the proposed amendments are already adequately addressed within the RPP, and other initiatives would effectively create an impediment to the Commission's well-defined and important mission. So I think, although the discussion and debate has been, I think, helpful and fruitful, I think I would oppose, adding the amendments to the RPP, and I thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to provide some input.
Thank you, Mr. Kerr. Next, I thank you, appreciate everyone's for their patience, and once again, ask everyone to keep their comments specific and precise, and we'll be able to keep moving forward here. We'll go to Samuel Alexander, and then we'll go to Rosemary. So, Samuel?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Okay, I'm Samuel Alexander Bechtold. I've been a lifelong resident of Barnstable, born and raised, and I support the proposed amendments to the RPP, and I feel that this discussion is upsetting to me personally, because I feel like the buck is being passed down the line when we're talking about not amending and having stronger language. I feel that, there is no reason not to accept these proposed amendments other than lack of accountability. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be Rosemary and then Eric. Rosemary?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Rosemary,
Okay.
I can hear you.
Thank you. My name is Rosemary Carey, and I'm from Falmouth. Thank you for taking my comment today. Notwithstanding the presentation by Ms. Senatori, the RPP as written does not respond to the climate crisis on the scale that is commensurate with the problem. The public was asked for their input, and many hundreds of Cape Codders paid attention, signed petitions, wrote letters, attended public hearings, and spoke out at demonstrations as well as in other ways. Many of us are here today on a beautiful June summer day because we feel this is so important. What we're hearing today from the staff recommendation is that the language of our petitions is already included elsewhere, so cannot be included in the RPP. However, in the same breath, we're hearing that our petition language belongs in yet another document, the Climate Protection Plan, a plan that the public knows nothing about, when it will be included, and whether it will be regarded with as much weight as the RPP by the towns in their comprehensive plans. It's true, everyone on this call shares the same goals, but the point of the citizens' actions around the RPP is that we're not acting fast enough. Here in Falmouth, where I live and sit on the Energy Committee, it took 3 town meeting votes over many years for our town to adopt the stretch code, paving the way for us to become a green community. That's too long. We would like the Cape Cod Commission to get ahead of the towns, not lag behind it. If we're going to reduce greenhouse gas to the levels we need to reach, we will need to build net zero buildings, transition to 100% renewable energy, and electrify our transportation systems. In my opinion, the RPP should not only include language to that effect, it should skywrite it. So we look to the Cape Cod Commission for leadership, and I respectfully urge the board members to vote in favor of adopting all of the RPP amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Next will be Eric and then Bob. Eric, this is the proper time, buddy.
Okay, sorry about that. I couldn't hear you before.
That's all right.
So thanks for hearing my comment. My name's Eric Bibler, and first I just want to say that I do agree that climate action is a high priority. I sympathize with the petitioner's sense of urgency, and I share that urgency, and I think everybody on this call does. After listening to all the comments from everybody so far, I think this is very clearly a debate over process. And I think that the Cape Cod Commission staff tried very hard to make that argument very clear and not confuse the issue. So this isn't really, I think at times we're confusing the goals that we all share versus the appropriate path to take. And I think that the Cape Cod Commission staff has made a compelling argument that this isn't the appropriate way to accomplish these goals, that there could very likely be many unintended consequences by inserting this language and including its specificity in the regional policy plan. There's a whole web of planning and regulatory documents and initiatives that all go together and they all have their appropriate place. And I guess, I think the commissioner that really said it best, as far as I'm concerned, was Commissioner Kevin Grunwald. He didn't use these words, but if I were to put it more bluntly, I think he was noting the fact that this is an exercise in single issue politics, attempting to reorient the entire mission of the Cape Cod Commission. And I don't think that's appropriate. Affordable housing, wastewater, mental health, poverty, these are all urgent problems. And I don't think any of them should be substituted for the depth and breadth of the mission of the Cape Cod Commission. So I think that there will be unintended consequences if you adopt these amendments. I think that all of these goals are adequately expressed and there are other ways to pursue them. I think they're already highlighted throughout the regional policy plan. I think very little, I basically think nothing is lost by retaining the existing language, and I think very little is gained by adopting the new language. And I'm a little bit concerned, I have to say, maybe not specific to this proceeding, but parallel efforts are being pursued with the same or similar petitions to boards of selectmen up and down Cape Cod. And the intention there, or the effort, is to try to insert some of this language in the charter of these various towns. And that parallel exercise, I think, highlights what's wrong with this today. These types of things don't belong in the town charters of these various towns, and they don't belong in the regional policy plan with this degree of specificity. So I would please urge the commissioners to trust your highly competent professional staff that I think does understand very well how all of these things fit together, and just have confidence that that you won't lose anything and you can pursue these goals adequately with the document that you have and keep the conversation going. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Bob, and then Lee Burns. Bob Gould?
Yes. Hello. I'm a Falmouth resident. I saw the movie The Human Element at the Martha's Vineyard Film Festival and formed the Falmouth Climate Action Network and showed the film around. And the thing that I feel is missing is simply education. I mean, we've got 70 people here. We have a lot of people interested, but we're not really spreading the message. I mean, so many people are driving SUVs and pickup trucks and are calling daily to have people come and do lawn work. And I just feel somehow an aspect of the work should really be to spread the word and figure ways to work with your group to have our local small groups have approaches to spread the information to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Lee Burns and then Michelle. Burns? Lee Burns? Going once? Going twice?
Sorry. Thank you, Harold. So my name's Lee Burns. I live in Sandwich. And as a medic during Vietnam, I worked in an emergency room. And so I get a sense of what emergencies really can be. Later in my profession, I identified novel tumor genes that are involved in cancer. And the groups that I were in were competing against other groups in the world. So what you have is time is important. And so when somebody's diagnosed with cancer, they don't want to wait around for a lot of analyses and things because what you need in those cases is you need action. And the climate emergency that we have has already defined what goals and actions need to be defined and done now. And so I wonder, as I listen to the plans and comments that are coming here, that why wasn't an action plan to address climate emergency done 5 years ago? And why wasn't it more aggressive and more well-defined in the RPP? So I strongly support the revisions that were submitted to you because this is an emergency and what we can do wrong is waste time. And I don't think we should delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Last public comment, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm Michelle Scarlett. I live in Centerville, and I submitted this letter, and I just feel called to read it. So thank you, Commission board members. Thank you for continuing the hearing regarding the petition to focus the Cape Cod Commission's 2018 Regional Policy Plan on our accelerating climate emergency. While the Commission staff is adamantly opposed to the petition and including stronger language in the RPP, please hear our real concern and fear about the rapidly changing climate and the effects it is having on Cape Cod. As a concerned individual, I look to the leadership on Cape to strongly and forcefully be proactive and move towards reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, moving towards 100% renewable energy, electrification of transportation and heating, and encouraging net zero buildings and solar readiness. Recently, decisions are being made regarding the Mashpee Commons expansion, the Cape Plaza new lease agreement, and the proposed solar farm in Sandwich, all of which will be around for the next 50+ years, and having the changing climate not factor into the construction, sustainability, and effort to be carbon neutral seems like such a wasted opportunity. Do we wait another 2 or 3 years for the next RPP? Attend additional public input meetings, hope the Cape Cod Climate Initiative will come up with more forceful approach? Please hear our concern. Please look out for my daughters, your children, and grandchildren. Please do everything you can to address the very real climate emergency we are faced with. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I did have one more hand go up. George, George, you'll be the last speaker. I will take no more public comment after George. Everyone's had a good opportunity, so George, go ahead.
Hello, Commissioners. George O'Leary from the beautiful south of Yarmouth. I'd like to give voice to the virtues of impatience. there's a critical urgency to the looming existential disaster. This is existential to our species disaster that we're not confronting. There's just simply no time left. As the Commission's well aware, all recent scientific research predicts a much earlier and more severe outcome than the landmark report by the UN Intergovernmental Panel, which only 2 years ago said urgent and unprecedented changes are needed. Around the world, the burgeoning flight from the tropics and arid and flooded farmlands is bringing the nightmare of widespread starvation and warfare long ahead of the foreseen apocalyptic oceanic flooding. And the Cape is at the cutting edge of this, with ever higher coastal flooding and our shoreline disappearing into the sea. Last July, the front of our house was ripped off by a tornado. Tornadoes on Cape Cod. The unheard of, the unprecedented is happening, and it's accelerating. The heavier spring rains are flushing now nitrogen into algae blooms and cyanobacteria in our riverways and all the kettle ponds around Cape Cod, including Long Pond in my backyard. In Cape Cod Bay, lobsters die in traps, the shellfish are disappearing, and there's almost no codfish on Cape Cod, are there? Of course, animal populations have decreased by merely 60%, and the rate of species extinction has increased by 1,000-fold. And the various pollinator species, the sources of our food, are going extinct. So what our hope, I think, of many of us were, is that, as Chris was voicing, that the kind of proposals that you have in front of us are to finally start setting a bar for enforcement, rather than planning to plan to plan. Now we're going to plan for a climate action plan, whatever that is. So we've clearly arrived at an evolutionary watershed. The first time our species is heading towards species suicide by its own hand. This is an emergency, a crisis. We are the first responders, and truly there is no planet B. Every moment counts now. Please take action. Approve these modest definition amendments and at least take a baby step toward getting us started. I've provided a written submission that has some references. Thank you.
Thank you. At that time, we'll close public comment and move to another round of commission member discussion. I'd like for the tech to put up a motion that we have discussed. If you could please put up the motion number 1. I think this is a motion that marries the two parties together, the staff and petitioner, to make sure there's no unintended consequences, but also this is something that I want to put out there before we start on our deliberations and conversations before we come up with some votes. This is a movement to convene a subcommittee to initiate a commission-led process. It would be an RPP update to develop a greenhouse gas emission reduction goal, objections, technical guidance, and other actions, therefore, to continue development a climate action plan that includes the considerations set forth by staff, and to review potential amended executive technical guidance to include additional climate change considerations. This was something that was discussed by staff, and it was something that we've looked at, and I consider myself, I was privy to this a couple of days ago. It was discussed with us. I think it's a effort, and somebody said earlier that we didn't do anything to look at what was said. I don't think that's a true statement. I think the staff did come back, answer the questions. I think a lot of the information was put there. I think there was a lot of good comment put out. but I would like to make sure that I would like for us to discuss this. This would be something that we could do. It would be a subcommittee that could meet in July, put together a subcommittee, and it would be a public process, which is something that we feel is very important, as you know, and it would put an amendment forward on its own for this summer for us to do an RPP update. So at this time, I am going to open up the floor for discussion from the commissioners. And I see a couple of hands.
Excuse me, point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Jessica.
The slide that you currently have up there, I believe needs to be updated to reflect what you have just said regarding the commission-led an RPP update. That is different than what is reflected here before you start having a conversation.
Okay. Let's give a minute and let that happen. In the amazing world of Zoom and everything else that's going on around us. And once that's done, Jessica, will you confirm that that's exactly what I stated so that everyone has a clear understanding and there's no back and forth on that?
That's what I heard you say, Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay. So I'm going to read it again. This is a recommendation to move to convene a subcommittee to initiate a commission-led RPP update to develop a greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal, objectives, technical guidance, and other actions thereto, to continue developing a climate action plan that includes the considerations put forth by staff, and to review potential amended existing technical guidance to include additional climate change considerations. That is the motion that's been put forward. At this time, I will start off with the commissioners that have raised their hand. Once again, if anyone wants to speak, all you need to do, all the commissioners, I'm only hearing from commissioners now, public comment has been closed. So I will hear from the commissioners at this point. And Joy, it looks like you were the first.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I liked the motion better before RPP was put in. I am a person who likes to get both sides together. At the last meeting on this, suggested that the staff get together with people from the other side. I think it's quite obvious that this is going to get voted through, but I would like to give staff a chance to change their mind and at least educate the people as to what we have been doing on the Cape Cod Commission. We have put in fertilizer regulations. We have come up with regulations for wind turbines to avoid what has happened in Falmouth. We have encouraged businesses to have bike racks and showers for their employees so that they don't have to drive to work. We have encouraged people to buy land in Barnstable, to extend the bike path so that people, again, do not have to use a car. We've done a lot, and I would like the staff to do our own so that people will know what we have done. We had a meeting. At the beginning of this meeting today, we had a presentation, the SIDS report. Around page 59 of that report, it goes into great detail about climate change and what we need to do to improve our climate and to save our climate. So I would really like to see our staff, at least representatives from our staff, be representatives for the people who want to change the RPP so that they come out understanding what we have done in the past and how we feel about our future. And that's it for me. I just like to bring sides together so that basic understanding, and then if it goes through, that's what people wanted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy. So next will be Ron and then Elizabeth.
Yeah. Where did this motion come from?
It was suggested by the staff.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be rude, but we're here to vote on the petition articles. It sounds like this has been put in here to basically undercut our votes on petition articles by saying, well, don't worry, we're going to do this anyway. I don't see
agree, and as chairman, that's why I allowed this to go forward.
Well, I think you made a mistake, okay?
I feel that sometimes that's a possibility, but I don't think this is one of them.
Well, why don't we vote on it after we vote on the petition articles? Because, you know, this parliamentary procedure has no place in taking a straight up or down vote on the petition articles that are in front of us. All right. So are we suggesting that if we pass this, then there's less reason to pass the petition articles because the staff is going to do it anyway? Is that why this is here?
No.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Thank you. I do want to just respond to that. And you at your last meeting had asked staff to go back and take a look at the amendments and find areas where we could address some of the concerns that were in the petition. And so that's what we've done. And it's important for a potential update to the regional policy plan really to hear from all voices. And so we want to make sure our stakeholder process could be inclusive. And so any amendments to the regional policy plan, which is part of this motion here, we could develop a greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal, and it would be accompanying objectives and technical guidance, and can be an amendment to the regional policy plan. And this could be a place where it's a compromise between the commission staff's position and certainly what the petitioners are putting forward. And so that's the genesis behind this, and we'll continue to work with the climate action plan and the technical bulletin amendments as we presented in our staff presentation.
No offense, Christy, but if you looked at, you didn't make a single recommendation to change the language or negotiate the language of the petition articles. So you may have, and you did not meet with the petitioners or any of their representatives. You came up with the same the same negative recommendations that you came with at the last meeting. And so, I mean, I just feel that this is a poison pill amendment to lead us to believe that we don't have to vote, or we don't have to vote up on the other petition article amendments because it's going to happen anyway, and don't worry, everything's fine. So sorry if I'm rude, but
sure.
I've been on this road before.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just one final response, and I appreciate those sentiments. I do want to just make it clear, though, that in the presentation initially, I referenced multiple times a commission-led process, and we agree with the intent behind the petition, but we don't agree with the process. And we want to make sure that there's an inclusive process to amend a regional policy plan. The language as presented is problematic in many of the cases. And so agreeing to incorporate some of the intent behind this is where the commission staff is.
Well, I just calm down now and say that I intend to make a decision on each one of the petition articles, and I hope the other commissioners do. And this recommended motion is not going to have any effect on my decision. And I don't think it should have any effect on the decisions of any of the other commissioners, because it popped up out of nowhere without any kind of advance notice. And it just seems very suspicious to me. So sorry about that, but there it is. Thank you.
Chairman?
Thank you. Ernie, going down the list. I'll be with you.
Don't forget me.
Yeah, it's all right. Elizabeth, and then Dick Elkin.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have some questions about this motion popping up, but my real issue with this whole thing, and I think was stated very clearly by Kevin and then by Eric Bibler, was we're debating process. Nobody disagrees with the issue of where we are on climate change and what the problems are and where we have to go from here. But we went through months and months of work to update the RPP, and to make a change after just 2 commission meetings really bothers me. And I'm just not sure how much people think making those changes to the RPP would make a difference, because we don't get the DRIs that we used to, where we could sit down and say, you can do this, you can't do that. But I think the big thing we have to do is work with the towns and hopefully with the state to change some of the rules and regulations. But the commission itself, I don't think can bring about some of those changes that the petitioners are asking for. I think a lot of it has to be done on a local level, and maybe if we change the LCP requirements, that would go a long way towards helping this if the towns even do their LCPs or update this. As I said, I'm just having a real problem with this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next up will be Dick and then Charles McCaffrey.
I do agree with a lot of the content of this motion. There is some a lot of lower level work that needs to be done to support the goals of the petitioner's article. So I would like to propose an amendment to this motion to say, move to approve the petitioner's changes and convene a subcommittee to initiate a commission-led process to update, and the rest follows. That is, it's not an either or. All of these steps are necessary to ensure that the goals of the RPP change are in fact followed through. So that's a formal motion, Mr. Chairman. I would ask you please to ask for a second, but that I would like to amend this motion.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. So the idea and I'm going to ask the technical support if they could, and Jessica, you can help me with this, please, is to move that we approve the amendments that were proposed by the petition. And
So, Mr. Chair, just from a technical standpoint, in terms of if you move to approve the technical amendments, that's the question that's before you, and you've done that by making this motion. You could, include I think what Dick wants to do is convene this process and have you include the concepts that are in those amendments. So you could move to convene a subcommittee to initiate a commission-led RPP update to include the concepts presented by the petitioner amendments, including but not limited to, and this list does, I think, set out generally what those represent.
okay. So I have a motion in front of me to basically approve the amendments that were put forth, the 11 petitioner amendments.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of order. First of all, the recommended motion, was that made and seconded?
Yes.
I didn't hear him.
Well, the motion was made to amend the motion that was here.
I'm talking about the original motion, the recommended motion.
No, it was not.
It was made, there was no second taken.
Yeah, it was not, Jack.
I'll second it.
Well, right now we've got another motion on the floor, which will be to.
But there is no motion on the floor because it's an amendment to the original motion, which was not seconded. Correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Counsel.
Mr. Chair, I believe there is a motion and a second on the floor, and that is to amend this language that's in front of you. And so I think, Mr. Chair, what would be important is before there's any more discussion or vote, that there's agreement, and perhaps we refine the language on the screen so everyone is in agreement with what you are voting on.
Okay, so what I'm going to do at this time, I'm going to pause for a couple of minutes. I'm going to allow technical support to take care of this situation with what's on the screen. So we'll have the motion in front of us. We know exactly what we're voting for. I want everybody to stay signed in. Don't sign out. Stay signed in, and we'll just take a moment to allow them to take care of this. This will give you an opportunity to stretch your legs, but we'll come right back.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a point of order, please?
Yes, Frederick.
I don't have the agenda right in front of me, but is this motion anticipated in the agenda, and are we treading in open meeting law areas? I don't recall that this motion was part of the agenda. Maybe Jessica can answer that.
Yes, well, the motion is naturally progresses from your motion, whether you're going to move to approve, move to deny, or move to approve with modifications. So I would believe that you could take this action.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yes.
If we approve this, are we then going to go back? Are we then going to consider the petition articles individually?
Well, I think let's get the wording up first and we'll come back to that question. I think first, let's get the wording that's going to be exactly what we're voting for on the screen, so we have an opportunity to answer that question, and then we'll come back to that. Okay? As I said, I'm going to...
So I think we can do this right in the meeting with everyone here. I don't think you need to stop the meeting.
Okay.
David, if you could, on the motion that's before you, the amendment, it says move to convene a subcommittee to initiate a commission-led RPP update. That, and you could add, that includes the concepts presented in the petitioner's amendments.
Do you want me to make that directly in the motion, or is there
right on the screen, please?
Yep. Could you give that to me one more time, please?
Yes, move to convene a subcommittee to initiate a commission-led RPP update that includes the concepts contained within the petitioner's proposed amendments.
Mr. Chair, that was not my motion. My motion is to approve the changes and then initiate a committee to deal with the lower level issues. Now, I recognize Ron's point that we would like to look at these items one at a time, but this motion seems to, the original motion seems to preempt that. And rather than preempt it, I would say, look, we'll just approve it and deal with lower level items. So my motion is not to have a subcommittee look at lower level items. I believe that belongs to the commission as a whole. My motion is, yes, we approve them. Now let's deal with the lower level items. And I believe that was the motion I made and seconded. I wouldn't like it to be revised.
Okay, and I'm going to go back to my original comment. Let's take a minute. Jessica.
So you had a motion on the floor, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Elkin proposed to amend your motion, which was before the commission. He's suggesting that he wants to amend your motion by not taking the motion, taking an approval motion instead.
No, I
don't know how that's not an amendment of this particular motion.
Yes, it is.
Woody, could I offer something? This is John Eidman.
Yes.
Thank you. So you want these motions to be separate anyway, whichever one comes first, and I heard what Mr. Bergstrom said, you want to take motions separately about acting with respect to the proposed amendments, and then whatever other proposed recommended motion staff might have. You really don't want to intermingle those things. I do want to step into, there was some suggestion, or I think there was some lack of understanding why staff has fallen at least on this recommended motion. And it was really to get at a fundamental issue that even the members raised at the last hearing session, which is greenhouse gas emissions reduction, even admitted by the petitioners, is the underlying foundational goal. So the electrification of a heating system or the electrification of the transportation system is not the underlying goal. as the regional planning agency, planning for the region, the underlying goal is greenhouse gas emissions. And the objectives to get there may be different. They may be different than 100% electrification, but that's something the entire public should be able to weigh in on. We can agree that the underlying foundational goal is reduction. Where there may be some disagreement and where there needs to be room for discussion and further discussion is how you get there and what parties are responsible for doing different things within this web of actors. I think these are things that Mr. Elkin specifically even mentioned at the last hearing session, trying to focus on emissions reduction as the fundamental issue. So that is where staff, after thinking about all this, thinking about what the petition actually says, thinking about what our commissioners said, this is why staff fell on this particular issue, because this is the underlying goal at the heart of many of the things that the petition seeks. Thank you.
Thank you. So we need to determine if we want to, Vic, do you want to withdraw your motion or you want to move forward with it?
I want to withdraw it and instead make a motion to table this and proceed with what Ron was suggesting, to look at the changes one at a time and get comments on each of those before we proceed whether we want to adopt them or not. So that's my motion, to table this for now and proceed to look at the wording and the merits of the proposed changes.
Second.
Okay. Jessica?
Yes, so you have a motion and a second to table this motion. I believe that you need to take a roll call vote on this motion to table.
Okay. So at this time, I'll ask for all the committee members, all the commissioners to turn on their microphones, and I'll ask Lisa to take a roll call vote on a motion to table the recommended motion in front of us.
And Mr. Chair, if you could give David a moment to bring a grid up before she begins to state
Thank
names.
you.
Yeah.
Well, and to amend the grid, please.
Thank you, David.
Is that adequate?
Mr. Chairman, will we be having discussion on this motion?
Yes.
Should I proceed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to vote. If this vote is taken, I'll be voting no, and I just want to be very clear why. Typically, when someone makes a motion and they change their mind, they simply withdraw their motion. You don't need to have a vote of the committee. So I think it's complicating the process, and I would recommend to whoever made the motion and whoever seconded it, if they've changed their mind, simply withdraw the motion and withdraw the second and withdraw the motion, and we're done with it.
I'm proposing not to table my amendment. I withdrew my amendment. I'm proposing to table the motion in front of us, the original amendment, the motion, so that we can proceed to discuss the language of the petitioner's articles rather than put that off.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, what Mr. Elkin is referring to, I don't believe ever got a second. So if we could have some clarity on that, please.
It did not. So there was never a second there was never a second on the motion to move forward with the recommended motion number one that was there in front of us.
Correct. So therefore, if accepting what you say is how I heard it, then if Mr. Elkin simply removed his, whoever made the second withdraws it, and Mr. Elkin withdraws his, we go back to square one.
So Dick and Ron?
Okay.
What's that?
Withdraw your motion and second?
Yes.
Thank you. Ron?
Yes.
All right. So let's go back to our screen at this point. We'll have commission member discussion.
And the discussion is now on the petitioner's articles. Is that it?
That would be correct.
Wonderful.
I already have hands raised. Anyone that wishes to speak, as usual, what we've talked about several times. Anyone wishing to speak, for those online, click on the participants box in the bottom of the screen and then click raise your hand. I'll call on you when it comes. I've got Doug, I've got Kevin, so I'm going to start with Douglas at this time.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to call up the amendment language?
The amendment language on...
I'm sorry, I thought you were going to move through them.
No, not well.
Yeah.
We may, so be prepared. Douglas?
Well, I go back to what someone said earlier, that this seems to be about process now. Personally, I'm where I was at the last time we discussed this. I thought there was some language in there that conveyed a sense of urgency that the petitioners put forward. And I was hoping that the staff would look at that and pull that in where it seemed appropriate and consistent with what they were telling us about balance and so forth. I was a little taken aback that there was nothing taken of the petitioners. But I'm not ready to vote for all of the amendments. There is some language, and then I think we get into wordsmithing. So I'm back to setting up the subcommittee and letting a subcommittee work on this with petitioners and other members that are appointed. And that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you. Okay, Ron?
Okay, you know, here we are at the edge. I think we should take a vote on these petition articles. We discussed them at the last meeting. We discussed them extensively here, one by one. So I think it's time to fish or cut bait, as they say. I, too, am not going to vote for all of these. I mean, there's a compelling reason why we should try to mitigate the high cost of housing and consider that in context of our climate action plan. I mean, during the 50s and 60s, everybody put in electric heat because to do otherwise would be too expensive and it would push the price of housing above the means of a lot of people who want to live here. I could see that happening again. So there's something that I have to consider when I go down these articles. But I do believe that we should take a vote. I mean, this has been a long process. It started with a petition before the original commission when we did the regional policy plan update. We discussed it extensively, as I said last meeting. We've had it presented to us, both the current language and the language recommended by the petitioners. And I think it is time now to move on each one of these individually. And that's my humble opinion. Thank you.
Well, staff's recommendation the last time that we did this was to, staff recommended that we deny all the petition items, and that and then staff today again went forward and showed that they answered the petition items throughout. So I guess we're looking at first until we go individual on the items. If we have to go individual on the items, a motion to maybe take up staff's recommendation to first off deny all the petition items, and then we'll move forward on that to see how the vote comes off of that one.
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
I move that the board approve a petition Article 1. Inclusion of the petition Article 1 in the regional policy plan, the recommended language by the petitioners.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I second.
I have a motion and a second for Article number 1. David, can you put up Article number 1 on the screen, please?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is a case of first impression. We have never had a petition like this before the Cape Cod Commission. And if the commission chooses to go through these amendments one by one, I respectfully request that we table that discussion and bring it back in 2 weeks so that the commission staff has an opportunity to evaluate and come back with language that could potentially be approvable. There are a lot of considerations as we've gone into a lot of detail on why this could be problematic to approve each one individually at this moment. As was just mentioned, if you would like to take a motion as staff is suggesting to deny and then see where that goes, you could potentially do that. But I do have some reservations of taking these one at a time, and I would respectfully request that you table that conversation and let us bring back some additional considerations for your review and evaluation.
So that would mean that we would, at this time, step back and take a motion to continue the hearing to July 23rd. I'm sorry. That would be July 23rd. Because that would be our next meeting. So, Ron and Cheryl, would you like to withdraw, or do you want to push forward?
My motion is on the floor.
Okay.
Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, David.
I thought that we didn't have to table the motion to develop the committee, meet with member staff. We didn't table that because it didn't get a second anyway, but I thought we still had that to do. And this was going through the articles just to inform that process as to what the commission is looking to assert. And then the motion that was presented would allow the two to come together and massage that language and work out those details at a later date. That was my understanding and interpretation.
Jessica or Christie?
The motion that's on the floor right now is requesting to approve the article, the First Amendment.
And it's been refused to withdraw.
That's right.
Correct.
And I think there should be some discussion
article suggested.
I'm sorry, you spoke over each other, so didn't really hear what either one of you said. Yes, Dick.
There's a motion on the floor for Article 1.
Yeah.
I would like to have some discussion of Article 1 before we vote on it. That would give us a sense as a commission as to whether we accept it, we reject it, or we think it should be referred for refinement. But at least we'll get a sense of what the commission feels on these articles.
Well, there's not a question about whether you can refine it. It's an either or situation. You either accept it or you reject it.
Well, after discussion, we might move to table a particular article.
Then what Christie was asking for is the opportunity for staff to go through the articles one by one and come back to us on the next meeting on the 23rd and to go over them so that staff would have an opportunity to comment on each one individually, the effects of it and what can be done, yes or no. Now, so there's not a question of yes, it's a yes, we accept it, no, we don't accept it. That's the only two options. There's not another option to say we're going to modify this in any way.
Mr. Chairman?
Question.
Yes, Charles.
Wouldn't we be able to amend if this motion is put forward, I should be able to propose an amendment to the petition language?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, there would potentially be the opportunity for amendment. And so I respectfully request that the staff have an opportunity to go back one by one and bring this back to you at your next meeting. There are unintended consequences, and I want to make sure that the commission has the opportunity to weigh in specifically on each of these.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
As the maker of the motion, the staff already did that. All right. Now at the 11th hour, it looks like some of these are going to pass. They want to do it again, maybe with some sense that, oh, this time maybe the commission isn't going to reject all the articles, so let's give it another bite at the apple. It's been weeks. We know what this petition is presented a long time ago. We've looked at it. We know Christie presented the language and the staff recommendations to us at the beginning of this meeting. Okay, what we're having now is more sort of parliamentary procedure to try to avoid an up or down vote on this. I mean, I recognize this very, very well. And I just feel that we as elected or appointed officials have a right to, we have to make a stand. We have to make a decision. That decision is going to have to be made. And the idea that somehow the staff is going to relook at it, come up with some, nebulous language that we can all vote for, that's not going to happen. There are real issues here, and we have to come down on one side or another on them. And that's my feeling. It's time to either move ahead or reject these. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Joyce.
this is one of the messiest things we've ever voted on. What? And this is a serious issue. It's climate change. And we're going on like this, like we're going to vote whether a hot dog stand is going to be down the street. I think Jessica's suggestion that the staff get together and give them a chance. Everybody makes a mistake, but at least give them a chance. And when we come back in 2 weeks, we can vote on each of the articles, but it won't be messy like it is now. 2 weeks is not going to get rid of climate change. We know that. But I think we need to do that as grown-ups in this thing. It is so confusing. And everybody's got a point. But this is messy. Sorry, I'm done.
That's all right. I agree, and I'm sitting in the hot seat. Yes, Christy.
And I agree, and we want to make sure that we get this right. And so we are listening to you, and we hear your comments, and we'd like the opportunity to go back and re-look at each of the 11 proposals. The compromise we had struck initially in proposing that motion was to convene a subcommittee of the commission to really evaluate all these things, recognizing based on your comments today that you'd really like us to go through and identify language in each of the 11 that could potentially be approvable. We can go through and identify where that would make sense and where there may be some unintended consequences that the legal analysis may have been identified. So I would respectfully request that. This is a case of first impression for the Cape Cod Commission. And so we want to make sure we get this right. I mean, this is a big opportunity, and we want to make sure that this is an opportunity that doesn't get missed.
Now, and that's great because it makes us look like we're grown-ups. And very optimistic. This is how we should behave.
I agree with you, and I understand that, but I still, as chairman, I have a motion and I have a second.
Under discussion?
Chairman, may I speak?
Go ahead, Fred.
Yes, Fred.
My question is if we vote on the motion that's before us, brought up by Mr. Bergstrom and seconded, and that amendment is voted down, is that gone? That means that would, so there's no other time to bring it back and rediscuss it, would then be down to 10.
Yes, you'd be gone.
Rather than do that, I would respectfully not want to vote on one particular amendment and then go back and look at the rest. I
don't want to put words in Ron's mouth, but I think what he is intent to do is for us to go one by one on all 11 and vote on all 11.
I understand that, but I personally believe that Christie's made a request. I would honor her request. I think it's reasonable. But I think if we go forward, some items may get voted down because you need more time to discuss them and understand them. And we won't have the opportunity later on to say, all right, let's bring it back and vote in favor. So I would be in favor of continuing the matter.
All right,
Thank
you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
I'm going to go to Cheryl because she's the second on the motion, and then I'll come to you. Cheryl, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I've made my position clear on these amendments. I think our executive director well, let's put it this way. You know, I'm listening to the back and forth between our county commission rep and our executive director. And given the size of the impact of this vote, I as well thought the opening presentation from the executive director was intended to address unintended consequences. So I understand the position, and out of respect for staff, if we want to, if you want to entertain a motion to bring all of these amendments back in 2 weeks and have staff one more time walk through it and somehow present information that they have not presented today, if that is the case and it will be stated, I will withdraw my second.
Good.
Well, I want to make sure that everyone understands that it's not in 2 weeks. The continued hearing would be July 23rd.
Okay, that's fine.
I just want to make sure that that's, the 2 weeks has been brought up, but our calendar brings us back on July 23rd. So
is that fair? We have an agreement that we're going to bring it back on July 23rd. Staff will have one more chance to bring forward any information that they feel they have not. And then I certainly will not be planning on postponing this. I think I agree with Mr. Bergstrom. It's time for us to take a vote, but I will happily give staff to July 23rd, given the importance of this matter. So,
yes, Christy.
Thank you. I would respectfully agree to that. And I think that this will give us an opportunity to go back and address the language. We have pointed out some of the issues, but this will give us an extra opportunity. We will focus on all 11 of them and bring back our staff's recommendations for you.
All right, so Ron?
It seems to me that these petition articles presented to the commission a long time ago. The staff looked at them. They came to us and recommended we vote against all of them. Okay. We then delayed our vote until this meeting, and the staff has stood up and said they are against all of them. Now, what were they doing for all that time if they didn't look into the language and make recommendations? What were they doing? I mean, they've had months to make recommendations. They knew this was coming. But now at the 11th hour, it looks like some of them, I think that they went ahead believing that eventually these petition articles would be turned down. Now it looks like some of them will pass. Now they're asking for another bite at the apple. Are we going to get are they under pressure? Are they going to say, well, we'll make some concessions to the language? I mean, I just feel that this whole process hasn't been played out the way it should have been played out. I mean, I know.
Right, so I understand. So you're not going to withdraw? So
I'm not going to withdraw.
Okay, then I would need a second on your motion because Cheryl has withdrawn her second.
Second.
Now I have a second.
I'm sorry, Chair, who was the second?
Dick Elkin.
Okay, thank you.
So what is going to happen, in my opinion, is we're going to go through each article one by one and do a vote on them as it's stated. We will have to take them as they are written, and we'll move forward on the petition items individually.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. We should have a discussion of each article. During that discussion, we can amend the article. We're not required to take it as written. There can be amendment to the motion to change wording. So we still have some input, and including we can also, during the discussion, take another motion to table discussion on a specific article if it's problematic. But at least we will be looking at each article, and the commission will have a chance to talk about each article.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Joyce.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Jack McCormick, please.
Well, wait a
I have
minute.
my hand up.
Jack, 1 minute.
Okay.
That was with Joyce. I'll come right back to you.
Okay.
Yes, it's my opinion that if we're going to discuss each one individually, and obviously, as Dick Elkins has pointed out, we have to have discussion. and someone may offer amendments, I think that definitely we should postpone action on this until that July meeting. And I would make that as a motion.
Well, I've already got a motion on the floor, Jack, to start on the individual motion, I've got a motion and a second. It's now 5:43, so I hope everybody brought their dinner with them.
I speak,
Joyce?
Mr. Chairman. This is how long did it take to revise the RPP, the last one? This is too important an issue to go through this tonight, going through 11 suggestions, discussing them, changing them, whatever. Christy and Jessica have an idea. It allows the staff to come back and say, okay, they're going to vote for this. I'm having a problem, but I'm willing to work. Even if you could get somebody from the petitioners in to sit with the staff eventually and come back on the 23rd of July and vote like grown-ups. The whole process is just way too confusing, and it doesn't make us look good in how we're treating this important issue. That's it.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if I may, Jack McCormick again.
Yes, Jack.
On the motion, we have a motion on the floor, it was stated. And on the motion, I would urge my fellow commissioners to vote down this motion. And I will then make a motion to postpone all these articles till the next July meeting.
Yes.
Jessica, point of order. We already have a previous motion on the floor.
Yes.
I spoke on the motion. I urge my commissioners to vote it down.
Yeah, he's speaking on the motion on the floor.
So so I need a second to his motion to move
No,
forward?
no, you have a motion and a second. This is discussion on the motion. As
Okay.
part of his discussion on the motion, Jack McCormick has suggested that members vote it down. That's what he said.
Point of order. Jessica, when is
Yes, sir.
when is a motion to adjourn in order?
It will not be until you take up this motion unless, again, it gets withdrawn. So either you vote up this motion or vote down this motion, and then you can decide what to do.
I'd like to call the question on the motion.
I would ask that we would allow the members that have had their hands up to be allowed to speak on the motion.
Okay. Then I will allow the members with hands up to speak. I see the order is Stephen Mealy and then Fred. So Stephen.
What about me? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a significant change to the presentation's results as a result of today's meeting. We've all had time to look at this. And I think with the gravity of the situation, to start saying that we've had enough time and it's time to cut bait is an absolutely terrible way of solving the issues before us, of making critical decisions about how to address climate change within the RPP. And I think with all due respect to the motion maker and the second, I would ask you to withdraw it and give staff the time to take the feedback that they've received today from both commission members and the public and try to incorporate some of what has been said today and the petition back into the RPP or supporting documentations and regulations so we can do the right thing and address the concerns of the petitioners and the concerns of the commissioners who have to work with the RPP after this. So that is my request, that you, both Mr. Bergstrom and Mr. Elkin, seriously consider withdrawing their motion and giving the staff time. Pointing fingers at the staff because they're suddenly coming up with motions or something does not make this the right way to go. And that is my request, gentlemen.
Thank you, Stephen. Fred?
Well, I think Mr. Mealy has just hit it all because I believe we have a lot on our plate in front of us. I think we have a lot of discussion to go through on each item. I think even the first item could easily take us, well, it'll take a considerable amount of time. And I think no matter how it goes, we still need input from the staff. And I would ask respectfully to follow exactly what Mr. Mealy said. We should postpone motion movement on these items. I'd ask that the petitioner and the second withdraw, and let's put this on for July 23rd. Thank you very much.
Tom?
Thank you. I too agree with what Mr. Mealy stated. I would like to add one other alternative. We were initially presented with a motion that said to set up a subcommittee to update the RPP. And in my short tenure with the commission, I've been very impressed with the subcommittee format and with the thoroughness with which it's handled, where people with other stakeholders with other perspectives are allowed to come before the subcommittee and state what they're hearing. I read in some of the comments today about concerns about affordable housing and solving that issue. And so I really feel very strongly that that first motion that was put up has a lot of value to it and is something worth considering. And I would again, as Mr. Mealy did, encourage the motion to go article by article to be withdrawn. And I would like to have a conversation on setting up a subcommittee to modify the RPP and bring real clarity to greenhouse gas emissions and how we can incorporate that into our mission. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
I'm going down the list. I'll be right with you. Dick, Charles, and Ron, you have all spoken several times. I'm going to continue and skip and come down to Kevin Grunwald. Kevin, you're on mute, buddy.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate Stephen Mealy's recommendations. And I'm not sure if I can do this way, probably not. In the absence of that, I would like to call the question on the motion that's on the floor.
I'd like the opportunity to speak first, however. I've been trying for quite a while.
You know what, Kevin, I'm going to allow her to speak because there has been several hands raised and it was back and forth, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes, Jackie.
When I look at the intent of this article, they're extremely worthy, and I think everybody seems to have a similar feeling. But the language is so vague that it does not translate easily into an action plan on part of the county, on part of the towns. And there's no real guidance in here as to how developers would comply with these statements. So I think they need to go back, and I'd like to see the old RPP committee go back into action and work with the staff, that it not be solely a staff-led opportunity, but a committee that has input from some of the commission members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of order, if you don't mind.
Yes, Ron.
These are petition articles. We have a legal obligation to vote on them. Now, what is our ability to amend them? If this was a town meeting, the petitioners would have to agree to amendments. So can we simply amend these out of existence without the agreement of the petitioners? I mean, they could stand their ground and say, we want to vote. That they're legally entitled to a vote. This is my humble opinion. This is a petition article. It was signed. It was done according to Hoyle. And my understanding is they're legally entitled to a vote on it unless they withdraw it.
Okay. Jessica?
You have a motion and a second on the floor. You can decide whether you want to take up this vote unless they want to withdraw it. In terms of when this vote has to take place, it does not happen. There's no time requirement for you to do it today. It does have to take place. He's right. It does have to take place, but not right at this moment.
Do the petitioners have to agree to changes?
No. What the process is, you have a petition amendment before you. What is required to happen is the commission members, all of you collectively, consider these amendments either collectively or individually, however you decide to take them up. And what you are required to do is either vote to approve them with modification, or deny them. Those are the three things that you have to do. Once you do that, staff sends a report to the assembly regarding what your vote was. And then they take it up accordingly, depending upon what that vote was.
Yeah, my only problem with that is that the staff will get together and make recommendations, and those recommendations will be put forward as a package. Whereas there's 18 of us, are we all going to submit individual individual changes? And it seems like quite a messy process. But if that's the process, I guess it is. But it seems to me that we're going to be voting up and down on the staff recommendations, because what's the alternative? Anyway, I've said enough.
Mr. Chairman, in lieu of the fact that the maker of the motion and the second have declined to withdraw the motion to consider number one, and the question has been called, I think we have to vote on number one.
I agree. Okay.
But I would like at least to see the wording of what we're voting on. We have had only discussion on process and no discussion on the merits of this change. And we're voting blind. Why don't we at least look at the wording and have some discussion on the merits of the change?
I believe, Mr. Chairman, that once the question is called, there has to be a vote on whether to call the question or to put the question forward. My limited experience in parliamentary procedure is not extensive, but I think I'm correct in saying that once the question is called, the motion has to be voted on.
We're going to vote on question number one.
No.
No, Mr. Chairman.
We need to vote on it call.
The motion to call the question is debatable.
Correct.
Not debatable.
And I would like to say that before we call the question, and my opinion on the motion to call the question is, we should at least look at the contents of what we're voting on, so we're sure when we vote on it, we know what we're voting on.
The motion
That's
to
my
call
comment on whether we call the question.
I'm going to move forward to the vote on question number one. Can we put up question, Dave? Do you have a copy?
Mr. Chairman, that's not the motion before us. The question before us is whether or not to call the question.
That's debatable.
Correct.
A motion
Mr.
to
Chair,
call the question is not debatable.
We don't have the same formalized proceedings. We don't have a formalized parliamentary procedure. So I'm not even sure we recognize calling the question in the same way that town meeting does. Recall at your town meetings that you actually have a formalized procedure adopted town to town. It's generally some version of formal parliamentarian procedure or Robert's rules. So the commission doesn't have that.
There's a reason for that. It's not like they just decide to do it one way and we can do it another. The reason why the motion to call the question is not debatable. Okay. But if you guys want to keep going on, you can, but we could go on forever doing this.
I guess my larger point is I'm not sure whether you recognize something called calling the question. I think Mr. Elkin has said there's a motion on the floor, there's a second. Let's look at what the First Amendment actually says. Let's bring that up and act, if you want to act on it, act on it. But the whole idea about calling the question is a point of procedure I'm not even sure the Cape Cod Commission has.
Then we should ask.
Mr. Chair, you can have staff pull up the text.
Please pull up the text for question one, David, when you get an opportunity. Ernie, I understand that your hand is raised. And moving forward with the parliamentary aspect of it, maybe if you have comments that you want to make on the question, then we can move forward at that. The existing language with proposed new language was in blue. This is what is proposed through the petition. This is question number 1, growth policy for Barnstable County. The area, given the threats posed to Cape Cod by climate change, growth, and development shall be consistent with, and I'm going to have to close some screens here to get everything on my computer, consistent with reducing regional greenhouse gas emissions and increasing natural carbon on a scale and time frame aligned with targets and limits set under present and future state laws, policies, and regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would love to hear some discussion about what the unintended consequences of adopting this language would be.
Anyone from staff want to comment on this? Yes, Jeff.
Chairman,
I'm sorry.
this is why we've requested that this be continued so that the staff will have an opportunity, again, to weigh in on these issues. And with the extensive language that you'll be considering, we want to make sure that there aren't any, that the language that you're getting is correct. And so we would request respectfully that this, we have an opportunity to weigh in and do exactly as Mr. Elkin is suggesting, provide you that information.
But you made a whole presentation about the unintended consequences of this article. I'd like to hear it specifically because you made your presentation without any actual point of what that could be. This seems to be so generic. It's just setting a goal.
But goals need to be implementable.
Yes, they do. That's why those lower level plans are the implementation, and the commission should get involved in those lower level plans. We think it's possible to do this, but this is our goal.
I've got one, please. Tom Wilson, your hand's raised.
So one of the things that I'd like to have a discussion on this particular item is that phrase should be consistent with reducing regional greenhouse gas emissions. For example, if we had an affordable housing proposal before us and we had included this phrasing in the regional policy plan, and the affordable housing used gas heat instead of electric and didn't actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but was providing affordable or attainable housing for us. If we vote yes to include this as a change in the regional policy plan, are we then limiting ourselves as we are addressing things like affordable housing down the road? That would be why I think returning to the subcommittee format offers us a way to go through and discuss these and implement them with wording that works. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna, Ernie, you've been very patient. I appreciate that. You've been, and I'm sorry for the delay, but Ernie, please speak.
Question first.
Yes, sir.
My comments have to be on this particular
that is what we are currently debating.
Okay. Unfortunately, I don't think it's pretty hard to understand something that's, really needs to be much more time involved. And in my 20 plus years on this commission, I have to say this meeting has not been good. And I hope in the eyes of the residents of Cape Cod, the voters of Cape Cod, we are not, my opinion is we are not following the Cape Cod Commission Act and what it was put here for. I've got some real problems, the 20 plus years. And I really am upset when I hear people make a statement that, something like we give misdirection and misconception. That really bothers me. I hope everyone realizes when this gets out there and it's big news, we need to follow the Cape Cod Mission Act. Not this, in my view, nonsense.
Thank you, Ernie. Stephen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make amendment to the motion that's on the floor to table discussion on this and allow staff to review 2 commission members in a time certain in July. I think as collectively as a body, we are at a point right now where we've been here for 3 hours. There's a question about whether or not what the vote is, whether we can call a question, et cetera. I really think we've gone way beyond where we need to be to make rational decisions about something as important as what's before us this evening.
I'll second that motion. Jack McCormick.
Thank you, Jack. So I have a motion to amend the motion to vote and to vote on this on the meeting on July 23rd. I have a motion and a second. Jessica, am I correct that I can take a vote on this?
But you currently have a motion and a second on this growth policy question.
Yeah.
I think that you have to take this up. Unless is the amendment particular to this motion itself?
My motion was made to table discussion on this motion and take it up under discussion after review and report by the staff to the commission.
So I think you could achieve your motion. If you're in favor of this motion, vote for it. And if you're not, don't vote for it.
No.
Question on, I'm just concerned about, would we be able to bring it back in July?
Until the hearing is closed, any of these can be reconsidered.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something in response to what Dick Elkin asked for? A specific unintended consequence, or do you just feel like you don't have the time to hear that at this point? Because I'm more than willing to speak to that. So let's get back to what the Cape Cod Commission Act says. It says in the RPP that one of the things that the RPP has to contain is a growth policy. And the growth policy has to both be a policy that protects the region's resources and also provides for adequate capital infrastructure. So it's inherently kind of a locational sort of undertaking that's required in the growth policy. What the Cape Cod Commission has done in the 2018 RPP is come up with a significant new concept called place types, and that's tied directly to this growth policy. So if you want to disrupt that significant part of the RPP, which is this place types concept, then you'll adopt this proposed amendment, because this isn't directional or locational. This just raises an issue about an important resource, but a resource nonetheless. If you wanted to do this, you should probably have another statement about, and open space should be protected, and transportation assets should be protected, and housing should be provided that's adequate. And I think you're getting my point. You would cite to all of the commission's important goals, and you would have this feedback loop between all the goals you have in this growth policy. Now, in application, this growth policy is particularly important because what the Commission Act requires is that this is really one of the bases for a town to develop a local comprehensive plan that is consistent with the Cape Cod Commission Act. So again, if this becomes too specific and it's focused on too greatly on a single resource, that may impede the discussions the Commission has with the town for that very specific and unique vision a town has for its LCP and meeting the variety of goals that are contained under the Cape Cod Commissions Act. So this is another example of what I tried to bring up at the last hearing session about be careful about some of these because it may limit your ability and discretion to actually deal with the variety of different issues that come before you in a particular planning exercise like an LCP or a regulatory matter. You need to leave the ability not only for yourselves there, but for the public to weigh in on these things. And remember, we've just went through this LCP process by updating the LCP regulations after not having a new LCP for many, many years, because frankly, the process was too top down. We have a process now where towns are encouraged to come in with LCPs. And if this growth policy becomes too onerous and too focused, I'm afraid you'll chill the development of new LCPs being put forward to the commission for a determination and certification for consistency under the Commissions Act, which is ultimately a benefit to the region as well as it is to a town. And you need to understand with these LCPs that in as much as there's regional consistency needed, each town and each of the villages within a town are going to respond a little bit differently to regional consistency and responding to the regional policy plans and this growth policy than other towns are with different villages and different characters. So I would be very careful about becoming too specific with this growth policy because it has a particular application to the development and approval and review of LCPs by the Cape Cod Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Arnie?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Arnie.
I want to move to continue the hearing to July 23rd, once this is done.
Yes. All right. If Roger Putnam was here, I think I would be hearing him ringing in my ear, perfection in the way of progress. At this time,
Roger.
I've got 3 people that wish to speak. Dick Elkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will speak to this particular language. I think the goals are laudable. I don't think they interfere with any of the other plans. Perhaps they do. Someone might have an economic development plan to put up a coal-fired power plant in one of our towns. And I guess this would preclude that, even though a coal-fired power plant is entirely consistent with the growth or other objectives. I guess this might have a cross ramification. But it's perfectly clear what this is trying to do. Reduce greenhouse gases and consider that in everything you do. And that's straightforward, it's not complicated, and I think we should support it. Thank you.
Ron?
I appreciate that presentation by staff because it just reinforces the fact that they're against this. I mean, they've made that clear and I respect their opinion. They were against it when it was originally proposed. They were against it at our last meeting and they were against it today. But, you know, I don't think that's going to change. I mean, I don't think that we can say that, well, don't pass these articles because they're redundant. They already exist in some other area of the regional policy plan. And at the same time say, well, be careful because they have unintended consequences and they could come back to bite us. You can't have it both ways. This seems to be boilerplate language that simply proposes a stronger response to climate change. Now, I think we'll see how this vote goes. I'm not going to withdraw my motion. And I don't think that we can table the discussion while my motion is on the floor. So we'll see how this goes, and then we'll see what we're going to do with the rest of them. That's my advice. Thank you.
Fred?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when I heard the discussion about unintended consequences, and we talked about, someone mentioned, you know, development with a affordable housing place with gas, for instance. But what it says is, given the threats posed to Cape Cod by climate change, growth and development should be consistent with reducing regional greenhouse gas emission, which to me would basically mean let's deny any growth or development. We can say we're not going to have any affordable housing at all, because that's not consistent with reducing regional greenhouse gas emissions. They're all gonna need heat, no matter where you build. I think it needs to be discussed. And I don't know what natural carbon sequestration is. I can pretend to go along with the words, but our growth and development needs to be consistent with increasing natural carbon sequestration on a scale and time frame which is sort of nebulous. I need more time, and I need to understand, because I cannot vote for something that I don't completely understand. And I don't think it's ready to be voted for. And I'm not going to vote in favor of it because I don't think it's timely. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles?
My concern is what John said. This statement that's to be added here may be appropriate to include as a goal within the regional policy plan, but is not related to the locational aspects of growth management. It's not the right location in the plan for a statement such as this.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. David?
Yeah, I think the key part of this whole phrase highlighted in blue is should be consistent. I don't think that it's restrictive, and I don't think it's overcomplicating things the way some are kind of taking it. You know, if they had said will be consistent, I think that would be a lot more restrictive, but should be, I think, allows enough discretion for this to be a consideration and a factor in decisions. I don't find it as restrictive as people are taking it, in my opinion. And
Okay.
I would vote to approve it.
Dick, I've given you enough talking. We're going to vote. We're going to put this up for a vote at this time because that's what I am forced to do.
Mr. Chairman, there is actually two motions on the table. I'm not clear which takes precedence.
The motion that was put forth first will take precedent, and that is the motion to approve amendment number 1 as it was proposed and written to us. There was a second motion that we continue, close and continue the meeting until July 23rd. That will be the second motion, and we'll vote on that second. So at this time, David, do you need a minute to put up a grid for the roll call vote?
Yes, just one moment, please.
Thank you very much. So all the commissioners, please turn on your microphones.
Nope, hold on.
I'm sorry.
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Let me get one that works. Hold on.
It's been a long day.
We're ready to proceed, sir.
Thank you very much, David. So at this time, we'll vote, do a roll call vote. Lisa will call the roll call on amendment number 1. The yes will be to accept, no will be to deny, and you can also abstain. And then we will take a second vote immediately afterwards that was put forth and seconded, that we will move to continue the hearing until July 23rd. So at this time, Lisa, can you do the roll call vote for amendment number 1, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Fred Chirigotis,
No.
Mealy,
No.
Elizabeth Taylor,
No.
Tom Wilson,
Abstain.
Richard Roy,
No.
Joy Brookshire,
No.
Charles McCaffrey,
No.
Jacqueline Edston,
No. No.
Ernest Vigilio,
No.
Doug Fromm. Doug Fromm? I'll skip Doug. Cheryl Andrews,
Yes.
Harold Mitchell,
No.
Kevin Grunwald,
No.
Richard Elkin,
Yes.
John McCormick Jr.,
No.
Ron Bergstrom,
Yes.
John Harris,
No.
David Whedon.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to just go back to Doug Fromm in case I missed him. Doug? May have left. Okay, so we have 4 yes votes, 12 no. Motion fails.
Amendment number 1 has failed. Now we will do the second vote, which will be for continuing the hearing to July 23rd. And I'll give David a minute to put that up. Thank you, David. Lisa, if you could do a roll call vote on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fred Chirigotis,
Yes.
Stephen Mealy,
Yes.
Elizabeth Taylor,
Yes.
Tom Wilson,
Yes.
Richard Roy,
Yes.
Joy Brookshire,
Yes.
Charles McCaffrey,
Yes.
Jacqueline Edston,
Yes.
Ernest Virgilio,
Yes.
Doug Fromm, Cheryl Andrews,
Yes.
Harold Mitchell,
Yes.
Kevin Grunwald,
Yes.
Richard Elkin,
Yes.
John McCormick Jr.,
Yes.
Ron Bergstrom,
Yes.
John Harris,
Yes, please.
David Whedon.
Yes.
17 yes votes, motion carries.
I ask no one to leave, please. We still have 2 more items on the agenda, new business. Does anyone have anything they want to bring up at this time? If not, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, Jack McCormick, on the new business, I'd like to propose at some future agenda, it doesn't have to be the next meeting, that we read and instruct the commissioners, the fellow commissioners, to read the section of their documents pertaining to the selection of officers. I mean, we're extending the present officers until July 1st, and I thought it might be wise for them to know what goes on. I'm not precluding the idea that we may have a further extension of these officers, but I think it would be wise if they knew just how officers.
Real fast. We voted to extend the current officers for 6 months. So we will be extended to the end of the year. So you're not out of the hot seat yet.
Okay.
All right.
Well, anyway, I think they should read the selection of officers.
I agree with you on that, and they should. But yeah, so
Thank you.
that being said, any other new business?
Yeah, Woody,
Yes.
if I may, I just had a question. Are we precluding reestablishing the RPP subcommittee or some other reasonable facsimile thereof to work on this? Or is it strictly going to be staff for the next month?
I think that would, I think taking from what was said today, I think that would be an excellent suggestion. And I think staff will be acting on that appropriately. So as Jackie said, wipe off the mothballs of your RPP group and get ready.
Thank you.
All right. Might be a fireworky 4th of July over in 322 Main, or, you know, a Zoom meeting coming soon to you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I got Ernie and Jack as a motion and second. So at this time, I'll take the roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fred Chirigotis. He's gone?
Yes, I said, okay.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't get you. Stephen Mealy?
Yes, Lisa.
Elizabeth Taylor?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Richard Roy,
Yes.
Joy Brookshire,
Yes.
Charles McCaffrey,
Yes.
Jacqueline Edston,
Yes.
Ernest Virgilio,
Yes.
Doug Fromm, Cheryl Andrews,
Yes.
Harold Mitchell,
Oh, yes.
Kevin Greenwald,
Yes.
Richard Elkin,
Yes.
John McCormick Jr.,
Yes.
Ron Bergstrom,
Yes.
John Harris,
Yes.
David Whedon.
Yes.
Thank you. We have 17 yes votes. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. I'll see everybody back for another fun-filled session on July 23rd.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy 4th of July early.
Thank you.